True love. Everyone wants to find it, and some think they have. But imagine a relationship that starts out like a fairy tale, but slowly turns into a nightmare, where your every move is monitored and your every word is scrutinized. Surveillance becomes a weapon in the hands of an abuser. Cloned phones and tracking apps are just a few tools used to invade the victim's privacy. Their phones are no longer a sanctuary. They become instruments of control. Footsteps echo down an empty hallway. Doors slam shut, and the outside world seems miles away. Isolation is a powerful component of control. Victims find themselves cut off from friends, family, and support networks, leaving them vulnerable and reliant solely on their abusers. That is by design. But the nightmare doesn't end there. The manipulating partner tightens their grip by exploiting their financial dependence. Imagine having no control over your own money and being denied access to resources needed for independence or escape. It's a sinister strategy that traps victims in a cycle of submission where their very survival hangs in the balance. Let's dive into that darkness. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the Darklivity podcast. Darklivity is about the dark downward slope into the depravity of the human mind and the consequences that such darkness brings to light. I'm your host, Kimbyr, and I'm here with my co-host, best friend, and love of my life, my boyfriend, John.
Hi.
How you doing this time?
Oh, I'm good.
Gonna say a little bit more than hi?
Well, we're getting there.
So we just want to thank all of you for coming to our last video and for being here today. We also re-recorded a portion or portions of this video after your feedback. So thank you so very much for being kind, but also giving us some constructive criticism because these videos are for all of you. We are not watching them. So we really do appreciate it. And we hope that we will get better as time goes on. But John, you did a really good job. And there were a lot of really awesome comments about your hair.
Yeah.
But also, it is hard to do this. And so I give you a lot of credit for it. And they did too.
Gonna get better every time.
It will. So thank you for your patience. And we always accept feedback as long as it is kind and respectful. If this is your first time here and you've never seen our faces, it's finally nice to meet you. I have a main true crime channel here on YouTube, and many of you are avid viewers over there, and I'm so glad that you're now here. And if you're new, I will link my main channel in the cards and in the description box. And thank you to all that watched our first episode that launched on Halloween. It's our very first time doing these videos, so there's definitely a learning curve. Today, we're going to be discussing a very heartbreaking case. One that can truly happen to anyone. On the morning of July 30th, 2011, Lisa Harnum was calling her mom, Joan, who lived over 9,000 miles away in Lisa's hometown of Toronto, Canada. While whispering into her phone, she said, "Mommy, I just want you to know that I love you and I love Jason with all my heart." Jason was her older brother. When Joan asked what was wrong, Lisa said, "Mommy, if anything happens to me, please contact Michelle Richmond. Mommy, it's okay. I'll call you and talk as soon as I can, however I can." Unfortunately, that was a promise that Lisa couldn't keep because just 4 hours later, she would be dead. Before we discuss the day that she died, let's discuss how Lisa lived. Lisa Cecilia Harnum was born on June 12, 1981 in Scarborough, Canada. She grew up with her mother, Joan, and her older brother, Jason. He actually picked out her first name, and her middle name was in honor of her great-grandmother. Lisa's mother said that she was adorable and sweet and was born with a shocking amount of dark hair on her head. She was a very easy baby. She was easy to love and easy to raise. She was brilliant and very mature for her age. As a little girl, she loved to play football and practice martial arts with her older brother and listen to music. Whatever activity Jason was involved in, Lisa wanted to be involved in too. And my younger siblings were the same way. My grandpa actually used to call my sister Sierra me too, because those were basically the first words that she said, because she relied on me to make all the decisions and then she just followed along. And I know that you're an only child.
Yep.
So you may not have a lot of experience with that, but
I talk to myself.
I'm sure that a lot of viewers can relate to either being an older sibling that's looked up to or looking up to yours. But Lisa's brother was more than just her brother. He was her confidant, her hero, and her role model. The two were extremely close. They were raised by a single mother, so they understood the importance of taking care of one another, and they formed a very close bond. They relied on one another for support and companionship. Aside from the hobbies that she did with her brother, Lisa's absolute passion from the age of 3 to 16 was music and dancing. She studied tap, jazz, and ballet, often competing in dance competitions throughout Canada and the United States. Her love for dance really became more than just an activity she did to pass time when Lisa was around 8 years old. She began her journey into the world of dance by enrolling in tap and jazz classes at the Sandra Amadeo Dance Studio near her hometown in Scarborough. At the dance studio, Lisa's path crossed with her future best friend, Sarah. Little did they know that this chance encounter would eventually blossom into a lifelong friendship. As Lisa and Sarah continued their dance education at the studio, their bond grew stronger. They practiced together, they learned together, and they shared joys and challenges that came with mastering various dance techniques. But their friendship didn't end there. As fate would have it, Lisa and Sarah went on to attend the very same high school. And during Lisa's time there, she dedicated a significant amount to dancing. She was doing dance activities up to 4 times a week, with 2 additional sessions on Saturdays. Ballet and dance can be really intense. I stopped doing it as a kid because it was so hard to keep up with. For some, they do it their whole life and they continue and become like professionals.
My parents made me go to a jazz dance class when I was like 7.
Jazz.
Yep.
Aw, that's cute. My sister Janelle did ballet for so many years and she was competitive. She did it a bunch of competitions and her feet would come back bleeding. Like there were cuts all over her feet from the shoes. Wow. It's very physically demanding. But interestingly, despite Lisa's dedication and her extensive involvement, she did not want a career in dance. Sarah revealed that Lisa's love for dance stemmed from the pure enjoyment of the art form. It was a means of self-expression and a way to immerse herself in something she truly loved. Throughout her high school years, Lisa was known for her beauty, both inside and out. She had gorgeous, wavy hair that she usually wore straightened and big green eyes and olive skin. Despite winning the hearts of many admirers, she remained single. However, Lisa's focus was not on finding a boyfriend. She liked to have fun, and while she enjoyed going out and having a good time, she was far from being a party girl. I don't know why they always associate if you like going out with being a party girl. But she had a diverse range of interests and passions. One of her greatest joys was performing and being on stage. She thrived in the spotlight. Even though Lisa liked to have excitement and entertainment in her life, she found equal contentment in the simplicity of spending time at home and being with her friends. And her favorite pastime included engaging in meaningful conversations, sharing laughter, and creating memories. And I'm like that too. Kind of a homebody. We like to go out.
I used to go out a lot, but now I enjoy spending all my time with you.
But being a dancer came with a lot of pressure to have the perfect body. I'm sure a lot of us know this. And in the dance world, that meant being thin. Her mother said that as a teenager, Lisa began being self-conscious about her body. She was experiencing unwanted male attention at an age where it wasn't welcomed or even understood, and it scared her. She was strikingly beautiful. She looked like a model, and the extra attention often made her feel uncomfortable. That's when she became really obsessed with the way that she looked. And to regain a sense of control, she started to control what she ate, sometimes not eating at all or deciding to get rid of that food. And we know how that usually happens. Joan eventually took Lisa to the hospital concerned for her well-being, where she was eventually diagnosed with an eating disorder and hospitalized for being dangerously underweight. And throughout her life, Lisa struggled with this condition. She experienced periods of improvement and then relapses. The battle became part of her ongoing journey. Despite her challenges, Lisa continued to strive for a healthier relationship with her body and with food. Lisa's first job was at a department store in Toronto called The Bay. And I've never been to Canada, but one of my best friends who lives in Victoria also has a YouTube channel. Her name's Laura Atelier, and she worked at The Bay as well. It's a very popular mall. I miss malls.
Yeah.
I used to go all the time.
I've been to Victoria and Vancouver. They have really cool totem poles.
Totem poles?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so strange. I wouldn't imagine those would be there.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'll have to visit some point.
Oh, yeah.
Lisa worked in the fragrance department and she met her new best friend, Jenny Romano. Jenny described them as partners in crime, and they loved the local Toronto club scene, and Lisa loved to dance for hours. And according to Jenny, she never drank or did drugs. She just loved to dance, and that's why they went out. Jenny said that her fondest memories were after a long night at the club and dancing all night. They would sit around Joan's kitchen table and tell her all the excitement they had while talking over each other. And Joan would make them tea and something to eat. Joan said that the two were very close, and Lisa would often remark that she could tell her mother anything and everything, while her friends had to hide their true lives from their mother.
I do remember doing that with my parents. They were very judging.
Oh, they were judging of you. So you couldn't confide in them about what was really going on?
No.
Why?
Because of the constant reprimandation.
He's building a reprimandation.
Reprimandation in my head.
That's sad. But I mean, it does happen. It's hard.
Yeah, it's okay. They tried their best.
I told my grandma and my mom basically everything.
No, that's good.
There were definitely things that I couldn't say. But I did keep things from my dad. Because, dads, they sometimes with their daughters are a little bit protective.
I can imagine.
Another thing Jenny said, that from a very young age, Lisa was always attracted to older men who could take care of her. And Jenny thought that this was because Lisa watched her mom struggle as a single mother, and she didn't want that same hard life for herself. What do you think about that as a man? I want to preface this with, I don't think having standards or preferences is an issue, because to each their own. And there are many men who work really hard and want to take care of a woman, and they impress them with all the things they have, knowing that they're going to find a woman like that.
You love me for who I am. You have ambition. I have ambition.
Yeah, we're a team.
Exactly.
And I do remember growing up, my grandma was old school, obviously. She was from a very different time. She would always tell me, like, look pretty, be nice to the men, learn how to cook and clean so you can find a husband. And I was only 12 years old, and I remember looking at her and going, but what about love? And because I was determined to find somebody that I actually loved. And it took me 40 years, but I found you.
Yeah.
I found you.
Everything we did in our life led us to us.
True.
Yeah, it's good.
And now it's leading to you speaking for the first time.
In 2004, when Lisa was 23, she was going through a lot of changes. She wanted a different life. She wanted to be a new person. She had been meeting a lot of coworkers from the Bay who were from Australia and sounded like the perfect place for Lisa. There's more sunshine than dreary winters in Canada, and she loved getting a tan. So being in the sunny weather was perfect for her. So she decided her new life would take place in a new country, Australia. And for this new life, she wanted a new name. She began going by her middle name, Cecilia, but shortened it to Cece.
This was a significant move, and it wasn't without its fears. Being far away from home for the first time, Lisa was apprehensive. However, her determination to succeed outweighed any concerns she had. Lisa's friends and family were proud of her for making the decision to embark on this journey. Lisa's move to Australia marked a turning point in her life. She was no longer willing to rely on others for assistance. She wanted to prove to herself and the world that she could thrive on her own. This decision was not driven by a desire to distance herself from her loved ones, but rather by a deep-rooted need for personal growth and self-sufficiency. As hard as it was for Joan to let her baby girl move to Australia, she knew that Lisa would be okay. Joan had raised her daughter to be strong and independent and capable of facing challenges head-on. Deep down, Joan understood that this was Lisa's journey, and she needed to let her spread her wings and explore the world. However, despite her willingness to let go, Joan made it clear to Lisa that she would always be there for her, no matter the distance. Joan assured her daughter she was only a phone call away. I would be a wreck. And I did this to my parents. I moved to New Jersey when I was like 18 to take a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to work at the Trump Plaza and be in pageantry, and that's a whole other story. But now, as a parent, it's so hard.
When I was in that touring band, going to all these different places, drinking heavily almost every night, I can only imagine what my parents were thinking.
How old were you, though?
24, 23.
It doesn't matter. Parents are always worried for their children, no matter the age. But I always joke around with Shyla that she's probably going to stay at home. She's only 12. But I always tell her, you're going to be here till you're 35.
Oh, and she always says that too.
She does too. Lisa arrived in Australia on January 1st, 2005 with a 12-month work visa. On the initial trip, Joan actually went with her to make sure that she was happy and settled in. But more importantly, Joan wanted to make sure that Lisa would be safe. I've never been to Australia, but it's definitely on my list.
Definitely on my list as well.
And by the way, we really hope that we are pronouncing all of these locations correctly. We are going to be doing our best. Melbourne. Is that it?
It's like MELB''N.
Let us know in the comments.
Melbourne. It wasn't a surprise to those who knew her, but Lisa thrived in Australia. She felt a deep connection to the people, the country, in a way she never experienced in Canada. It was as if she truly belonged there. The vibrant culture, breathtaking landscapes, and warm-hearted locals made her feel at home. Well, Lisa's brother missed her and wished she would come back to Canada. However, he understood why Lisa was drawn to Australia. I mean, me too. It looks amazing there. The weather was amazing, and the allure of the ocean and the stunning city of Sydney was undeniable. Despite his desire to have her close, Jason wanted nothing more for Lisa to be happy. He could see how Australia brought her joy and fulfillment, and he genuinely wanted that for her.
And Lisa had another reason she was loving Australia. By May of that year, she had started working for a Sydney-based cosmetics company, and soon she began dating a colleague who was about 20 years older than her, and that's quite an age gap. But well, there you go. We know that she's always liked older men, and she's determined to reach her goal, which is meeting one that can help make her feel secure and taken care of. This unexpected connection led to events that would shape Lisa's life in the following years. According to Joan, the two of them got along exceptionally well, and they spent most of 2006 traveling together around the world, from exotic resorts in Bali to the famous masquerade ball in Venice, Italy. The couple complemented each other, they got along very well, and eventually they got engaged with Jason and Joan's blessing. However, the age difference started to become a factor, and this caused the relationship to end. The reality was that Lisa was trying to experience a lot of firsts in her life with a man who had moved past that phase in his life. All of his firsts were well behind him, and Lisa wasn't looking to be a companion for someone that was in early retirement. She wanted to feel settled and be in a relationship with roots and stability. She wanted a home and she wanted a family, which is easy to understand. But that's interesting because a lot of people think they know what they want, and when they get it, they realize it wasn't what they envisioned.
Absolutely.
And that would be hard, wanting to experience the excitement of doing something for the first time, and then the other person's excitement is dulled because they've already done it.
People imagine what they really want, so they go out and get it. And when they get it, they find out they don't like it. But what I don't think people do is actually sit with that feeling of like, do I really want this? And then play it out. Take like 10, 15 minutes out of your day to like sit with the situation and play out the scenarios in your head and bring up all the feelings that comes around it.
Yeah, that's called the why game. So if you say, I want to be with whatever, this kind of person, you go, why? And you ask yourself why, and you keep saying why, and then you drill it down, and you sometimes realize that the reason is very shallow. Like It wasn't as deep as you thought. But I also think that if you're with the right person, everything is a first because it's the first time you're doing it with them.
Exactly. That's my thought. Everyone's experience with somebody else is different.
Yeah.
So much.
And clearly, in this case, it wasn't the right guy for her. So she just had to experience that for herself. So after Lisa's work visa expired and she was not married to a citizen as she imagined she would be before that relationship ended, she decided to pursue Australian citizenship herself. And she discovered that one way to obtain citizenship was by training in a business of high demand. And in 2009, Lisa embarked on her journey by enrolling in the Australian Hair and Beauty College in the very famous Bondi Beach area. She attended classes and also worked at the front desk as a receptionist. She was driven by her passion for fashion and makeup, and you can tell that she's very well put together all the time. Her hair is always done. She looks beautiful. So Lisa found herself in the niche of hairstyling and quickly excelled in this field. Her dedication and her natural talent allowed her to develop exceptional skills. The principal of the school even spoke very highly of Lisa, describing her as someone who exuded charm and warmth. And not only was she popular among her peers, but she was also a very remarkable student. Lisa's outstanding qualities and dedication to her studies made her a valuable asset to the college community. In fact, the staff was so impressed that they wanted her to remain at the college and work there full time. This is also where Lisa met her next boyfriend. She started dating yet another coworker. And again, this man was quite older than her. But this time, this man was also married. So when Joan came to visit Lisa that Christmas in 2009 and she met this new boyfriend, and then she realized he had a wife, She asked her daughter to reevaluate her decisions. And that is when Lisa decided to take that into account when her mom had said and end that relationship. And I'm actually triggered by that because when I was growing up, I had a friend that would only date married men.
Oh, wow.
That was her preference. Remember I said it was okay to have a preference?
Yeah.
Within boundaries.
I mean, if the married couple's open to that, then yeah, great, right?
That's different. But still, what's in it for you if you know you can never truly be married to them?
Yeah,
I mean, you kind of get the short end of the stick, no pun intended.
Where's the pun in that, baby? So around this time, Lisa was in search of a roommate. Her married and now ex-boyfriend introduced her to a friend of his by the name of Simon Gattani, a local businessman. Simon was the co-owner of a high-end online shoe company that imported luxury heels from the United States to Australia. He appeared very well put together, always impeccably dressed, wearing designer suits, and never a hair out of place. He was good-looking, intelligent, and a wealthy entrepreneur.
Simon told Lisa that he had an extra room that she could stay in for a while. This was offered to her as a short-term solution to help her out until she found a place of her own. Her relationship with her current roommate had become strained because her friend didn't approve of some of the men that Lisa was choosing to date. Well, that's understandable, I guess. You know, if you're not into her dating married men, you're like, you can't bring them here.
Right, exactly.
From the beginning, this offer came with the understanding that it was going to be completely platonic, and it was strictly limited to being roommates. That was fine because actually, Lisa thought that Simon was gay. I don't know why, but that is what she thought. When Lisa told Joan about this new living arrangement, she immediately became concerned. She worried that Simon's offer came with strings attached, but Lisa assured her mom that she was fairly certain that Simon was gay and that it wouldn't be an issue. But as it turns out, that wasn't true. Simon was very much interested in Lisa, or Cece, as he called her. This relationship moved fast because they were already living together, and within no time, they developed a close relationship, and within just a few weeks, the two of them were sleeping together. They were both attractive people, they're both single, they're living with one another, they like to go out to nice restaurants, dress up, and they looked like they had a good time together. Plus, we know that Lisa likes older men, even though Simon wasn't that much older, maybe about 8 years or so, but still, he was older. Simon was attracted to her from the beginning. Is it weird that she's now dating like her ex's best friend? I forgot about that for a minute. But
I think it's weird, but I don't think men care. Some men don't.
Yeah, I'm too much of an overthinker. I mean, I know that I couldn't date a guy that dated a friend of mine.
But I mean, if it's like the guy's like, yeah, dude, totally not into her, not for me. And they were like in love.
I guess so. But isn't that a violation of bro code or like girl
all's
code?
fair in love and war, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, if your bro's like, dude, I'm so not into her, please, if you guys are into each other, enjoy, you know?
Lisa and Simon got along really well. They enjoyed each other's company, and as time passed, they had an opportunity to learn more about each other. Lisa had the chance to meet Simon's family and his friends as the relationship progressed.
Simon was born in Western Sydney in 1973 to his mother Lamia and father Saeed, and they were of Lebanese descent. They had immigrated to Australia and had 6 children, including Simon.
Meeting Simon's inner circle allowed Lisa to gain a deeper understanding about his background and his personal life. She appreciated Simon's bond with his loved ones, and it made her like him even more. He and his brother and sisters were very close, and the family valued that closeness. Eventually, after about 2 months of being friends with benefits, or I should say roommates with benefits other than just cheaper rent, Lisa and Simon's relationship took a romantic turn. Lisa found herself drawn to Simon's high-end lifestyle as he embraced a flashy and fashionable persona. Simon was passionate about his appearance and invested a significant time at the gym to maintain his physique. And I want you to know that this is the charm phase, or as some people call it, the honeymoon phase. Everyone is putting their best foot forward. It's all about compliments, passion, and overlooking things that could be red flags. I also noticed he had an eyebrow ring, and that threw me off because it seemed not professional. Like he has this professional look, like suits, like full luxury suits. And then I used to have an eyebrow ring in the same eyebrow. And I'm like, why? I don't know. I mean, I did it. Simon had a taste for the finer things in life, which appealed to Lisa as well. Even though she did not really understand what he did for a living, his occupation remained a mystery to her because he never explicitly revealed how he made his money. That's kind of weird. However, Lisa appreciated all the things he did for her. Remember, she likes being taken care of. Their relationship was moving along, and Simon had plans for them to move into a new home, an apartment at the Hyde building in Sydney. Now, this wasn't just any apartment complex. This was a 34-story luxury building. It was under construction at the time and planned to have its first residents the same year at the end of 2010. The rent was at least $1,000 a week. It was the most prestigious address in this area. So this was an exciting time. This building would be situated just across the street from a beautiful park. It's the Hyde Park. It boasts breathtaking views. And Lisa found herself dreaming about this. It was like a dream come true for her. She could not wait to share the news with her family. And she would get the chance very soon, and not just over the phone, but in person, because her mom, Joan's brother, Lisa's uncle, was getting married in Canada in the summer of 2010. For her birthday, in June of that year, Simon gifted Lisa a brand new iPhone 4. Now, I don't know if y'all remember when you got your first iPhone, but this was her first iPhone, and I know how excited I was to get my very first one. I think mine was in 2007 or 2008.
You have the iPhone 1.
No, I still have it. I don't still have it and use it. People used to wait in line. And I mean, they're still expensive, but back then, compared to like the typical flip phone, it was like having a luxury item.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God, when they first released the iPhone. I had a BlackBerry before the iPhone. I was on BlackBerry team.
BlackBerry. I had a Sidekick.
Leave
it in the comments what you had. Maybe you don't even have an iPhone anymore. But this helped Lisa because she talked to her mother every week, sometimes multiple times a week. And when they weren't calling one another, they were now texting back and forth. That's one of the reasons Simon bought the iPhone for Lisa, because the iMessage feature, he thought it would be great so she could keep in touch with her mom. And they sent daily texts to one another filled with I love yous, a whole bunch of little emojis and hugs and kisses. And despite the distance, Lisa and her mom were very close. They did everything they could to remain close despite the distance. Now they'd be face to face at Lisa's uncle's wedding. Well, this was an event that everyone was looking forward to, and they were looking forward to Lisa being there. She had been gone to another country. So family meant so much to her, and it would be fun to have 3 weeks back home in Canada. Lisa was looking forward to seeing her cousin Julie, who was more like a sister than a cousin. Joan was stunned when she learned that there was a problem with Lisa's flight. Yes. Sadly, she explained to her mom that when Simon went to book it, he informed her that if he chose those exact dates, there would be an issue with her being able to obtain what's called a bridging visa that she needed so that this trip wouldn't interfere with her Australian residency application for permanent citizenship. Now, I know how strict that can be, even though I'm no expert in these matters, but Joan was upset and disappointed. The entire purpose of Lisa's 3-week trip home was to attend this family wedding, and now she would be missing it. However, the good news was Lisa was still coming. She just had to fly into Toronto a week after the wedding, and then she'd be staying for 21 days. Why do I think that there's more to this story?
I know. There has to be.
There is.
Bridging visa?
It just sounds sketchy.
Yeah.
Once she arrived, though, missing the wedding and not getting to see as many family members and friends, she and her mom had so many fun things planned. The first few days, Lisa and Joan spent their days shopping, visiting malls, eating at restaurants, and watching movies. But there was something Joan noticed that bothered her, and it was Lisa's phone. It was like a third person following them around. It was always present. It had to be answered immediately anytime Simon called. Now, I'm just going to segue into this little thing because I do have an opinion on this. But what I wanted to tell you is, or tell the audience is, I've had trauma in the past. So when people don't answer me, I tend to get worried that something happened to them. You know, when you've had death in your family or really bad things happen, you tend to be like, oh my gosh. Or if you're like us and do like true crime stuff, my brain does not go to oh, their phone died. It's like, no, they got in an accident. But I do want to hear in the comments what your rules and boundaries are with, let's say, a partner, because I think there are also things that we like, just being with someone and having the respect to get back to them in a timely manner. But let's get some more context. As a mother, even though her daughter was now close to 30 years old, she was still her mother, and Lisa was still her baby. We always are to our parents, even when we get older. And this seemed like a red flag to Joan because it wasn't just kind of checking in or keeping in touch with Simon, it seemed a little more extreme. The phone constantly alerted Lisa to a text or a call, and she was expected to answer immediately. If there was a delay, Simon would call and question Lisa about why she didn't pick up right away. When Joan kind of questioned Lisa about it, she didn't even think it was a big deal. She explained, one, Simon bought her the phone, number one, to keep in touch with her family, but also him. And two, since we all have access to our phones, Simon believed that 2 minutes was enough time to either call or text back, and anything more than that was a cause for concern. So basically, she had a 2-minute window to respond, and apparently, according to Joan, there would be constant text. So much so that they couldn't even enjoy a conversation without being interrupted, and then, if Lisa didn't respond, she would end up on the phone with Simon explaining why and where she was, and all of that would take up even more time. Simon would call Lisa constantly and demand, for example, to know, why are you at the mall again? And she hadn't even told him where she was yet. And that's what prompted Joan to suspect that Simon could somehow track Lisa's location, which we all know we can do now. I'm sure back then there was apps like Find My Friends to know where people were.
Well, there was one instance where the phone didn't ring, and Simon's call went straight to voicemail. Lisa was in a near panic and had to excuse herself to call Simon back right away. When she did, he proceeded to yell at Lisa and told her to stop going out in public. This trip was for family time. Family time should be spent at home, not shopping at malls, coffee shops, or movie theaters where Lisa could bump into a man.
Lisa told Joan that Simon gave her strict instructions that she could only spend time with family during her trip, and under no circumstances was she allowed to hang out with friends, and especially not any men. I'm definitely getting triggered, and I know there's way more, and we're going to get to that, but there's also a time zone difference, and Simon didn't care. He didn't care if it was 3 o'clock in the morning, Toronto time. He expected Lisa to answer immediately. So one night during Lisa's visit home, she and Joan were enjoying a movie together. However, their peaceful evening was interrupted by Simon's persistent phone calls. Lisa initially decided, you know what, I'm going to ignore it because they were in the middle of watching a movie. It's rude to leave unless there's an emergency. But Simon's persistence eventually compelled her to pick up the phone. To Lisa and her mother's dismay, Simon continued to keep Lisa on the phone for a grueling half hour, causing her intense anxiety. It also gets you out of the mood. You know, you were peaceful, you were having fun, and that's all disrupted. And it puts you in a bad mood to have your partner upset with you. So recognizing her daughter's growing frustration, Joan decided to intervene. She grabbed the phone from Lisa's hand and asked Simon, who she actually never had an in-depth conversation with before, why he couldn't just leave them alone and allow them to spend time together uninterrupted. She told him, quote, we're just having mother and daughter time and you're upsetting Lisa, end quote. Simon told Joan that he cared deeply for Lisa and he was the best thing that ever happened to her. He said that he was doing nothing but good for her. Joan found his response to be odd and concerning. So she inquired about what he meant by that. Well, Simon, who was of Lebanese descent, had introduced Lisa to the Catholic Church, and he at one point wanted to become a priest. And because of this, he told Joan that this alone meant that he was a good influence on her daughter. He didn't want Joan questioning his intentions or his need to make sure that Lisa was doing well and eating enough. Now that right there, that we know was a huge struggle for Lisa, and Joan was well aware of her daughter's disorder and how it affected her. Even all of these years later, Lisa had still had to make steps to make sure she was healthy. And because he did so much for her, supporting her, meeting all of her needs, the fact that he, quote, allowed her, in his words, to go on a 21-day trip meant that Lisa should be thankful and responsive at all times. And this is a conversational podcast. That's why I have John with me. So if you don't like us and you don't want to get to know us, then you probably shouldn't continue, but we hope you do. So there are things I think we want to comment on. I know I do, because personally, like I said, I'm a worrier and I have a lot of reasons dating back to my childhood, which I don't have to go in depth about, but I get concerned. So I think that there are reasons why I would expect a person in a reasonable amount of time to let me at least know that they didn't die.
There's a different context, right? If you don't text back in 2 minutes, like, okay, one thing. Hey, in a movie with mom, texting, right? In a movie with mom, call you after movie. All right, baby. Love you.
Right, exactly. Like, let me just know.
Not like, no, you didn't tell me you're doing that. Well, you're doing very controlling.
That's
right?
different.
It's huge.
Exactly.
It's like so much wrong with that.
That's what I wanted to point out, because when you are in a relationship, you're not like you were when you were single. You know, when you're single, you don't have to worry about another person. But I even think like we share our locations, and that's for safety among other things. Like it is nice to know where someone is and our passwords. Like I don't care if you look at my phone or open my phone. However, there are limits to all of that. And with Simon, there were other red flags. In addition to this, you just mentioned being controlling. He was controlling over her spending time with her own family. But there's so many other things that you have not heard yet, and they're more concerning. Lisa explained to her mom that Simon was raised in a home with a brother and 4 sisters, and in his culture, the sons were treated like hotel guests. All of their needs were catered to, and the women were treated like secondary citizens, or even worse, they were treated like servants. And Simon didn't have to clean up after himself, serve himself, do laundry. If he dropped something on the floor, it would be picked up and returned to him clean and folded. So he had standards. And I touched on this in the beginning. It's okay to have standards. And in our last video, John mentioned the way we were raised and how it impacts our future. Well, Simon was raised with women taking care of him, but also a father being an authority over his mom and having ownership over her. So he expected Lisa to cater to him in the same way. And I guess that's a choice that Lisa and other women in these situations have to make. What can you tolerate?
Well, a week into her visit, Lisa's cousin Julie, remember, was like a sister to her, wanted to spend time with her and spend a few days together. Julie had come out and hung out with Lisa at her mom's. If she wanted to go anywhere else, of course, she had to get permission from Simon. And she had to promise that there would be no men present. She also had to promise never to leave Julie's home without anyone except her family, and that she could not spend the night there. Simon told Lisa she was required to drive back to Joan's house each night and only sleep under her mother's roof. I mean, like many of us, Julie thought these rules were pretty oppressive and controlling. Sometimes there isn't a person in our lives that will be straight up with us. And remember, Lisa lived in a new country where she was more isolated and moved in with Simon not too long afterward, without developing too many deep friendships. All she really had was Simon. If you have family or close friends, they could usually spot the red flags, and they'll be bold enough to tell you so, hopefully.
Actually, a few days into the visit to Canada, Julie included Lisa on a Facebook invitation to a party out in Toronto. Within seconds of receiving this notification, Lisa immediately called her panicking. She told her, remove the tag right now from the invitation. Simon cannot see it. She explained it away by saying that she was still going to the party, but she didn't want Simon to think that she was at these wild summer parties while he is back waiting for her at home. But Simon had access to her messages, and he'd be able to see that she had been invited to this party, and that would make him uneasy. And then he wouldn't want to trust Lisa to just go hang out with Julie after that. So she made sure to take care of it, and quick. Of course, Julie was concerned by how panicked her cousin seemed to be, but Lisa was adamant it was fine. She could hang out, she just couldn't miss any of Simon's phone calls while they were together. This was back in 2010, before the days when everyone was glued to their cell phones. In those days, not everyone had a cell phone. And she too was annoyed by the constant need for Lisa to check in with Simon. At one point, this was kind of an odd statement, but Lisa excitedly shared that Simon wanted to, quote, fatten her up, end quote, so they could have babies together. As this would be a way to explain his controlling behavior. Like, oh no, he wants to monitor me so that I'm eating enough because we want to have babies together. That's why he's constantly calling me. And it immediately reminded me of literally the witch from Hansel and Gretel. But it's not uncommon for women to do that in relationships too, to fatten up their man. When I was growing up, there used to be jokes about it. It's probably not appropriate, but oh no, he won't cheat because no one will want to be with him if he's fat and ugly. These are not my words.
God.
These are things that I heard people in my own Italian family saying.
I've heard that too.
That's a little weird.
I don't know. I mean, if you deeply love somebody, you don't care what they look like.
I want to be my best version for you.
Yeah, me too.
Julie noticed a few times when she was around Lisa how Simon would threaten to bring her back home early to Sydney if she didn't comply with his demands or answer his texts and calls immediately. Julie thought it was odd that this seemed to be a decision that Simon could unilaterally make without Lisa's consent. Well, later in the trip, Lisa secretly made plans to go to that party with Julie and stay at her house. And we remember Simon told her not to do that. She made Julie promise not to post any photos of her on their visit to Facebook and not to tag her in any photos either. She told Julie that Simon monitored her Facebook account very closely, and that is so weird. The night of the party, Lisa went out with Julie, and Simon immediately knew that she wasn't where she was supposed to be, which was back at her mother's house. So after an upsetting phone call from Simon, she told Julie, you know what? I have to go back home immediately. Lisa said she would just take a cab, but the cab ride would have been really expensive because it was over an hour away, and he was expecting her to drive back and forth and not spend the night. So a guy at the party, who was Julie's boyfriend's cousin, offered to drive Lisa back. She told the guy, listen, my boyfriend thinks I'm taking a cab, so you got to pretend you're a cab driver. And she asked him not to say anything when she was on the phone with Simon. And Lisa thought, okay, once I pretend this is a cab, Simon is going to hang up with me. But no, instead he demanded actually to stay on the phone with her the entire way back to her mother's. She had lied to him, and now he was concerned that she was going to be dropped off somewhere to meet someone, or maybe that she would start a conversation with a male cab driver. The entire ride back, she spent apologizing to Simon, saying she's so sorry for her behavior and that she shouldn't have gone out with her cousin, and she was extremely sorry. The guy driving was listening to all this. He even overheard her say that she was going to obey Simon in the future, and she said it again and again. So when he gets back to the party, he tells Julie how odd and controlling Lisa's boyfriend appeared to be, because that's like a major red flag. I'll obey you. I'll obey you, I promise. He relayed the entire disturbing conversation, and he told Julie that Lisa's boyfriend seemed crazy. By the time the visit was over and Lisa was heading back to Australia, her family was back home in Toronto just counting up all of the red flags. People around her were making comments. They could see things that maybe she couldn't. You know what they say? There were signs, and there were clearly signs here, but not in Lisa's eyes. She texted her mother after returning from her trip to Canada, which was very upsetting in retrospect. And Lisa wrote, quote, "Time for me to grow up and wear big girl pants now. This relationship sure has changed me a lot. I'm much more calm than I was before. Domesticated, conservative, and dainty. I bought a bunch of flat and casual shoes and no more cleavage. Simon is terrified of summer and the beach, and he said he would need to find me a burqa bathing suit," end quote. Okay, so some of you don't know what it is. It's also called a burkini. It comes from the word burqa in Muslim culture. It is this loose outer garment primarily used in public places by Muslim women, and it covers the body, the face. Usually it has like a mesh panel that you can see through, but other than that, it's just you are covered from head to toe. The burkini is basically something you can wear in the water. It's a burqa you can wear in the water, and the suit covers your whole body except the face, the hands, and the feet, while being light enough for swimming. So essentially, Simon wanted Lisa covered up. But now something that's not an excuse, but I want to point out, is that Simon is Lebanese, and his culture is fundamentally conservative. It's influenced by Arab customs as well as Islamic and Christian traditions. And families are typically patriarchal, with the man having financial independence as a prerequisite to marriage. So many Lebanese men ultimately don't usually marry until they're financially stable, and usually that's in their early 30s or so. And Lebanese individuals tend to be very proud of their culture and their heritage and their country. So these cultural differences are very hard to overcome in relationships. It's a gap that isn't easily closed. Being raised in two entirely different types of households with very contrasting ideals made it hard for Lisa and Simon to see eye to eye. But Lisa was trying for Simon. But Joan thought that this was way too much. Lisa was basically a prisoner in her own home on her 29th birthday. During that summer, She couldn't do much of anything without upsetting this man.
So this is what is called the controlling phase. It may start out innocent, like, hey, let's get a joint bank account, but then turns into one partner monitoring what the other one spends and asserting control, and it later escalates into controlling bigger aspects of their life, like where they go, who they talk to.
Slowly but surely, it appeared that Simon was unwavering in his quest to diminish Lisa's radiance. His actions spoke volumes. He began to purchase conservative garments for her and convinced her to get rid of all of her personal belongings. The transformation in her fashion sense was striking. Lisa went from embracing this revealing and seductive style to wearing buttoned-up long-sleeve cardigans, and as a result, her vibrance and her confidence seemed to diminish. But to be fair, there are people who convert to other people's religions or customs in order to marry them. But this was something more.
Not like I understand much about Lebanese culture, but it's something that you're raised in. And if there's love in the household and everything, like, everybody should be good and happy with the culture. But this guy so far just seems a little weird.
Once basic control is established, another way an abuser exerts more control over the victim is through isolation. This happens slowly, but the goal is to alienate the victim from everyone in their life except the abuser. And almost immediately after dating Lisa, Simon began telling her things like she didn't have to wear makeup because she was naturally beautiful without it. And that was true, but he had different motives. But slowly, it was made clear that he wasn't asking. He was insisting that she stop wearing it. He told her that all it did was garner the attention of other men, even saying that if she wasn't a whore and she was truly loyal to him, then she would stop trying to get attention from other men. At one point, he told her she wasn't allowed to make eye contact with anyone else because her eyes should only gaze upon him. According to Simon, one man should be enough for her. Don't let that gaze slip. Wow, I love makeup. I don't wear it for men. The act of putting it on is kind of soothing for me. It's actually a stress reliever, and I like to look nice for myself.
Yeah, so where do you get your self-confidence from? You gotta be comfortable with how you look, how you feel.
That's a really good point. And as you can see, this is starting to become more extreme. And I hate to say it, but I've been in a relationship like this. It wasn't as extreme, but sometime in my 20s where I had to dress a certain way because of the family, all those kind of things. And you start to feel like you don't know who you are anymore. Like a part of you died and you're somewhere deep underneath, but you don't even recognize yourself. And as a guy, is that normal to do that to a woman? Don't wear any makeup.
No.
Because when you met them, they were wearing makeup. They looked the way that they did.
Yeah, there's boundaries, right? Maybe the way you dress isn't for me. I might have a conversation with you being like, hey, I don't really feel it's appropriate.
If someone feels genuinely uncomfortable about something and you are doing that thing all the time and you're just like, well, you shouldn't control me. But you also have to take into account that is that person's. But we're not talking about extreme.
Prerogative. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not talking about extreme control. We're talking about the fact of feeling disrespect about certain things. Well, with Joan hearing all this, she was trying to piece everything together. So over time, she would ask Lisa questions, and ultimately, according to Joan, she found out that it was just 6 months into Lisa's relationship with Simon that the two began arguing. And I'm going to be honest, this part really triggered me. I almost didn't want to do this entire case because of this next part, because it hits very close to home. But Simon suggested to Lisa that she should go see a psychiatrist. Maybe that would help them stop fighting because she needed help, for her eating disorder and what Simon thought were her mental problems. He told her that all of their problems were because of her, and it was Lisa who needed to be fixed, not him. And during their talks with one another, Lisa told her mom that the reason she needed to go see a psychiatrist was because of the way she had been raised. How insulting is that? And I guess, unlike Simon, Lisa wasn't oppressed like the women that he grew up with. But all of these were red flags to Joan, but she couldn't fully express them to her daughter. She could, but she didn't feel like she could. It was very hard, and truly, I don't blame her. You've got a grown child, and they want to make their own choices, and you want them to be happy. Joan didn't think Lisa could possibly be truly happy living like this, but that wasn't the only thing. It was much worse. Joan would have loved to freely discuss the issues she saw with Simon, but Lisa had to tell her mom never to say anything negative about Simon in their text messages because somehow He always knew what the two of them had been discussing. Wow. So he was monitoring her Facebook, her texts, and Joan was worried, but had to stay silent. The fact that Simon was forcing Lisa to see a psychiatrist meant that he may have wanted her to get medicated. And I just want to point out that's another control tactic, making her think that she's crazy. But meds can also make you dull, like your emotions are dulled, and therefore it's easier for that person to be controlled. And that makes me so upset, and I feel so bad for Lisa. But it was true. Lisa was still struggling with her self-image and her weight. So Joan was glad that at least Lisa was posting pictures regularly to her Facebook account so that Joan could see, she could watch what her daughter was doing. If she was getting too thin, then mom would reach out and maybe say something because she knew how to communicate that to her daughter. But Lisa assured her that she was putting on weight, and Simon was actually helping with that. He had gotten her a personal trainer to help her gain muscle and to eat right. But the thing is, Simon no longer allowed Lisa to go to the gym because he told her it was a place for men to look at her body. And it's weird because before, I'm going to show a clip, they used to go to the gym together. There was men around, he was there, and he didn't tighten his grip as much on Lisa because he used to not care about these things as much, which is why I think it's so interesting. But he was even heard commenting about how the trainer is really kicking Lisa's ass with the workout. Okay, he had no problem with that. And then when she was lifting weights and she was struggling, Simon was like, "Come on, bub, do it for me." And I think that's so weird. And now he wouldn't even let her step foot in the gym.
Instead, Simon hired Lisa, a personal trainer also named Lisa. The trainer was Lisa Brown, of course, a woman, and the trainer was allowed to meet Lisa in their apartment gym. But instead of wearing cute, tight-fitting exercise outfits, Lisa had to cover up every inch of her body. I mean, even with a woman trainer.
Yep.
She had to wear loose, baggy, long-sleeve shirts and long pants.
Fashion was always something that Lisa had enjoyed in the past. I mean, remember, she was in beauty school and all that, but that was all behind her now. Now, she dressed for Simon's approval, and Simon only approved of shapeless clothing that hid all of her body. From the outside, everything she told Joan sounded positive at first. It seemed like Simon genuinely cared about Lisa, but after experiencing all she had in Canada with the excessive calling and monitoring, it no longer appeared to be healthy. Sometimes Lisa would let things slip in her phone calls with her mom, and maybe it was on purpose as a cry for help, but she would say things like Simon would no longer allow her to have any friends because he believed that they were a bad influence on her. And speaking of being in the beauty industry, Lisa had always loved her job at the Australian Hair and Beauty College. It provided her with a sense of purpose and fulfillment. However, Simon began going into her work unannounced and causing a scene. He told her she didn't have to work, and her being insistent on working made him look bad because he was the provider. Plus, the people she associated with at work were below them because Lisa and Simon were moving up in the world, and he didn't want them dragging them down. Lisa was so embarrassed that she never went back to her job again.
Oh, I would be embarrassed. It's amazing how Simon didn't feel embarrassed saying all that.
No, because they think it's normal. Sabotaging a partner's employment or intentionally undermining their job to make them lose it is a form of economic abuse, which is a component of coercive control. It's a way to undermine the victim's financial independence and stability. By Simon creating financial dependency, he was able to limit Lisa's ability to escape this relationship. It's sad because we know that she didn't grow up with a father, and her saying that she liked older men and wanting to be taken care of, it could be a sign that she missed out on that fatherly love. And that could be one of the reasons she ended up in a toxic relationship. We don't know that for sure, but this is a pattern that is seen in these type of dynamics. And sadly, when it does appear, it's almost automatic and no fault of their own. Lisa was looking for all of the things she wanted in a person that was very broken. It was as though Simon was following a playbook for control. By controlling Lisa's clothing, he was asserting power and dominance over her identity and her personal expression. It's a form of emotional and psychological abuse that aids to diminish the victim's self-esteem and individuality, and it's called denigration. This is when someone belittles you, they put you down, and they lower your self-worth. By dulling down Lisa's attire, it slowly wore down her confidence. It limits any future expressions of independence through self-expression, and it erodes Lisa's sense of identity. Like I talked about, you don't even know yourself anymore. By demanding pre-approval, it lets her know that even the most mundane areas of Lisa's life were within Simon's control, and that is just scary. And if you're Lisa and you love this person,
Or at least you think you do.
exactly like she told her mom, then you want to make them happy, so you try to comply. And Lisa and Simon's relationship had entered a new phase, categorized by Lisa's growing dependence on him and him alone. She reached a point where she could not make any decisions or act without Simon's permission. This newfound reliance on Simon has also impacted Lisa's career. She had to put her professional aspirations on hold to prioritize the relationship. So the once vibrant and active Lisa now spent most of her time at home disconnected from the outside world. But finally, it seemed like enough was enough. And she had finally seen the light. Because by September of 2010, Lisa was beginning to contemplate leaving the relationship. In one text to Joan, she stated, quote, "I feel trapped. Like I have to watch everything I say, do, feel, everything. I got in trouble yesterday because I said I felt cold. So stupid," end quote. But Lisa's biggest concern and reason for continuing to stay with Simon, in case you're wondering, was over her residency application. Remember that she's trying to become a citizen in Australia. She was hoping to obtain her residency by the age of 30, and it's coming up now. She didn't want to have to marry Simon to become a citizen because she had imagined being able to do it on her own. But now, after losing a lot of her identity, she wanted more than ever to have that security of not having to be with Simon for citizenship. She was thinking about leaving him at this point. Things got so bad between her and Simon that in another text, she told her mom, quote, "I'm thinking about it more and more every day, looking at places online, but don't want to go through the BS again. I miss my family and friends so much. I have no life. I'm thinking of bringing you down here to help me move my things. It would have to be a quick job though. I don't want to do anything stupid when I'm feeling the way I'm feeling in the moment. He would probably make me do it right then and there without getting my stuff. I have to be prepared. It's okay, mama. It's okay. I promise." End quote. Knowing what I know is going to happen, that made me really sad. Her telling her mom, "It's okay. I promise." That really is sad.
Lisa confided in Joan that Simon had connections with the government and could end her residency dream if he thought she was leaving him. So, if she left, she would need to do it in secret and quickly. And that wouldn't be easy considering Simon always seemed to be one step ahead of her.
Because he was.
He always seemed to know what she was planning.
A few weeks later, Joan was surprised when Lisa told her she needed to fly to Sydney right away to help her escape. And Joan would do anything for her daughter, so she would have done just that. But a few hours later, Lisa would apologize and she would tell her, "Simon, he calmed down. Everything is okay now." And then she would go on to apologize to her mother for worrying her and insisting all was better now. This is a very common situation that happens. It's periods of fighting followed by the honeymoon phase where apologies are made, gifts are sometimes given, and the aggressor will say, "I'm so sorry." And they'll feel so terrible and they'll never do it again. They'll even say, "Please give me another chance," but the cycle continues.
By the end of 2010, Joan was trying her best to softly and gently encourage Lisa to leave Simon and come back home. At one point, Joan told Lisa that possessions could be replaced, but people can't. And if she needed to leave without her things, that would be okay too. Lisa had to tell her mom not to send messages like that again because Simon read them. And that's pretty scary.
Yeah, it is.
So I think by this time, Joan was in fear for her daughter's safety. Joan began to suspect that Simon had a way of seeing her phone with spyware or an app, but she couldn't mention it to Lisa because Simon would see her text.
So how are you supposed to go about warning her, What would you do in this situation? Leave it in the comments because it always leads to very interesting conversations, but always be kind. It seemed like every few days, Lisa would change her mind about leaving, only to change it back again. In one message, she told Joan, quote, "I'm okay, mama. I'm just getting some stuff done and tying up some loose ends today. Passport, moving, travel, and everything. Sorry I didn't get to speak with you and the family today. I didn't even hear my phone. It was right next to me. How is everyone? Are you okay?" End quote. I'm going to fill you in on something that Lisa didn't know. Simon could not only see all of her messages, he could control her phone. Yes. He could delete messages, he could delete phone calls before she ever saw them. And you'll understand more later, but remember, he bought her that iPhone. So what seems like this really nice luxury gift, no, because he was even going on her phone and blocking people's numbers so that they couldn't contact her anymore. And then he blocked every man that she was friends with on her Facebook page. Lisa was down to only 55 friends, and they were all women. So her friends from high school who had known her for years, they thought it was weird that she had not reached out to them in a while. So they went to Facebook and realized they were unfriended and blocked. They also noticed the changes in her when they were still able to see her posting photos. Her friend Sarah, from back in her childhood, told her friends that she thought it was odd that Lisa was attracted to the Simon guy. Like, who was he? And she even said to her, he looked 50. But it wasn't just that. It was the change in the way that she looked. Her friends had actually nicknamed her Strawberry Face in high school, not because she had red cheeks or anything like that, but the shape of a strawberry, because her cheekbones were so high that it was the shape of a strawberry, which I thought was cute.
Yeah, high cheekbones too.
I do, although I was called Chipmunk. Yeah, I was a chipmunk. She had very high cheekbones when she smiled, but now she went from smiling to looking like a lost puppy dog. There was this one photo of her. I'm going to show it on the screen. She's just like looking up at Simon like he's the best thing in this world. And his ego, it is so fragile that he has to delete and block people. I would notice that. I'd say something because who else would be doing it if it wasn't me? But what did he fear was going to happen? Was he fearing she was going to cheat or leave? I'm kind of confused about that fear. It's something that I wanted to understand. And I'm getting a much clearer understanding of the darkness that some people have as we do these videos. But there's this quote, and I said this to you the other day. It's a man convinced against his own will is of the same position still. And it means that sure, you can guilt someone or pressure them into doing something, but inside they're still of the same opinion and belief. So yes, you can make someone stay, but if deep down they don't want to be in that relationship, it's never going to work out in the end. Lisa and her mom had to find an alternative way to communicate that Simon would not have any access to. So they turned to Skype. And things were getting even worse. During a Skype call with her mom, she was on video and Lisa was crying and she was upset and had a bruise on her face. But she insisted to Joan that the bruise was an accident. She said Simon had lunged towards her to grab her purse and that caused her to fall into a planter. So she is sitting there chalking it up to being clumsy. And you might ask, why is Simon lunging for her purse? Well, that was because he wanted to get a hold of something inside to examine it. And she thought there was nothing wrong with Simon demanding her purse from her. Lisa explained it away as if it were perfectly normal behavior, but Joan was heartbroken to see her child in such a frightened state. She was trying to put on a brave face, making excuses for her abuser. During that same Skype call, Lisa managed to send her mom a comforting text. It said, quote, "It's okay. It's all my fault, as usual. I don't know how he does it, but he turns everything around completely. All okay for now. Just gave in and let him win. Can't wait for the movie. I love you," end quote. A week later, there was another injury. And once again, Simon was fighting with Lisa to take away her purse. And in the process, Lisa's finger was fractured. And I'm sitting here thinking, I know that's not what happened, but I mean, I don't know. I'm going to clarify. I don't know, but when you hear the rest, I think you'll know why I think that. Again, Lisa took the blame for this injury. But as the weeks passed, Lisa sounded happy again, especially because even though Simon and Lisa had a tumultuous relationship filled with constant arguments, they were about to embark on a new chapter in their lives. The Hyde building was ready for occupancy, and it must have been difficult because that was something that Lisa was really looking forward to. And I can't help to echo the sentiment her mother said, that material possessions are not as important as your life and your well-being. The views from this apartment were breathtaking. They lived on the 15th floor of the building, and Lisa would often find herself just gazing out there from these floor-to-ceiling windows, just taking in the picturesque scenes below. She loved living there. It included 24-hour concierge service, a gym, a library, but she better like it because she wasn't allowed to leave. and she was being monitored by cameras. And I'm not talking about security cameras in the usual locations. No. What Lisa didn't know at the time is that Simon had installed a secret pinhole camera at the front of their door that not even Lisa, who lived there and went in and out every day, was able to see. She would have not known. And I'm going to show this on the screen because I wanted an example because I didn't even know what it looked like. They can put these cameras inside of a screw head.
Yeah.
Like you cannot see them. It could look like anything. It could look like a plug, an outlet on your wall, anything. Mm-hmm. And this was how Simon kept track of anyone that came in and out and anywhere that Lisa went and when she went. And she used to go for walks. I mean, it is okay in some instances, like we all have Ring cameras now and Nest cameras inside and outside of our homes.
Mm-hmm. Not hidden.
But not hidden. It does make you feel safe when you have a camera, but we know they're there. Mm-hmm. So installing a secret camera to monitor your partner is on a whole other level. I think it's a blatant violation of someone's privacy.
Oh, yeah.
And clearly another method of control.
So remember those walks we just spoke about? Well, Simon no longer wanted Lisa to go on them. So to prevent her from doing so, he purchased a state-of-the-art treadmill that he had facing the balcony and that stunning Sydney view. The treadmill placement was supposed to mimic the feeling of being outside. That is a very pretty view right inside their balcony, but still.
Yeah, she sounds like a rat in a cage at this point.
But despite all of this, not long after Simon and Lisa settled into their new home, Lisa wrote him a heartfelt birthday card in which she expressed her gratitude for her shared experiences and acknowledged the ups and downs of their relationship. Lisa's words conveyed her unwavering commitment to their partnership, emphasizing the strength she found in their love.
Was it stronger though? Because before meeting him, Lisa was filled with traveling, connecting with others. She had this vibrant energy. And now she's not an extroverted social butterfly anymore.
No.
She's not really thriving. However, within just months of being with Simon, her life took a stark turn. Instead of experiencing the real world, Lisa found herself walking on a treadmill facing an expansive hillside view that was supposed to simulate the outdoor walks that she once cherished, but wasn't allowed to experience any longer. Simon's presence had gradually dimmed Lisa's inner light, leading her to question herself and her desires. She wondered if it was wrong to want her own path in life and to challenge Simon's ever-changing demands that controlled her every move. One day she was determined to stay and make it work out, and the next, she was planning her secret escape. This wasn't the same Lisa that her family and friends knew and loved. On November 15, 2010, Lisa texted her mother about a night out. They were celebrating Simon's 37th birthday. She said, quote, "Simon gets too uptight when we go out. He makes the night turn into a nightmare. He gets uncomfortable with all the guys around. Thank goodness his brother was there. He sticks up for me and stayed with me for most of the night. He apologized in the morning, and we decided that going out to clubs was not good for us anymore. Too much BS and negative energy. I'm over it." End quote. Despite Lisa's attempts to maintain a positive outlook and find the silver lining in the compromises she made, her mom saw through the facade. Joan recognized that Simon's control issues persisted. He struggled with accepting Lisa's presence in this world. Despite his efforts to control her appearance, including her clothing and makeup, Lisa's undeniable beauty still attracted attention from others, and this infuriated him. He grappled with managing his emotions when it came to Lisa, who he treated literally like his personal property. Mm-hmm. But somehow, Lisa was able to persuade Simon to allow her, there's that word again, to return home to Toronto for Christmas that year. Joan was eagerly anticipating this time where she had an opportunity for a heartfelt conversation with Lisa, free from the suffocating presence of Simon's control, and she would find a way to help her escape. However, upon Lisa's arrival, the atmosphere mirrored her previous visit. When she got to the airport, Joan warmly greeted her, gave her a ride to their house, and it was evident that Lisa had put a lot of effort into her appearance. She looked gorgeous. However, her choice of clothing was quite interesting. It was very conservative, barely showing an inch of her skin. And what's more, Lisa wasn't wearing any makeup, which was very unlike her. Plus, her overall demeanor was meek and submissive. And Joan was worried about her daughter. I mean, she already was worried, but then when you see them like that and they look completely different, Just like last time Joan saw her, Lisa's phone remained glued to her hand. And despite the 16-hour time zone difference, she was required to immediately be available for Simon's calls. Observing even more drastic changes in her daughter, Joan couldn't help but feel taken aback. It wasn't solely her appearance that had transformed, but her very essence. Lisa appeared subdued, her voice was quieter, her demeanor was softer, and in compliance with Simon's preferences, she wore flat shoes, okay? She couldn't wear heels anymore, and her long hair had to be tightly secured in either a really, really tight bun or a ponytail. So you know the saying, don't let anyone dull your shine? That is exactly what's happening here, and it's sad. Her previously outgoing nature and the warm hugs that she would give people, that was all gone. It just left behind this sense of maturity in looks and personality. And remember when she tried to make that a good thing? Right. She was like, I'm maturing. I'm going to wear my big girl pants. I've matured so much. Yeah, but she was like 30 going on 60. We all know this isn't about maturity. It's sadly her becoming smaller so Simon can feel bigger. Lisa spent most of her trip home inside Joan's apartment with her mother and her brother. This time she wasn't allowed to visit her cousin or see her friends. Simon made it clear it was about family and not partying. On December 27th, Simon's controlling texts began. One stated, quote, "Please don't let any guy talk to you today. And please don't look at any guys, as your eyes should only gaze on me, the one," end quote. Another one said, quote, "Where are you? What's it called? And take a picture of what you're wearing today. I'll call you soon, okay? Even though I told you to call me before you went, Cecilia, you have selective hearing," end quote. When Lisa asked her mom how he always seemed to know where she was, Joan suggested that he bugged her phone. Neither of them realized he had been tracking her through an app that he had already placed there, and he is just so sneaky. We kind of discussed that, but I'm going to tell you more. During their heartfelt talks, Joan begged Lisa not to go back to Sydney, but she insisted she wanted to follow her dream of becoming an Australian resident. She tried to reassure Joan that Simon was encouraging, he was positive, he was making good changes in her life, and she was happy. The thing is, Lisa had felt this heavy burden of responsibility. She felt like she was to blame for all of the problems in their relationship. She was convinced that if she could only change and become a better person, a better version of herself, the person that Simon wanted her to be, then everything would be okay. One night, while visiting Joan, they went to a restaurant and she looked stunning. She was wearing this blue button-up shirt. It was covering everything up to her neck, exposing no cleavage. I have a picture of this, and she does look absolutely gorgeous. As they sat down for dinner, Lisa asked Joan to take a photo of her because she needed to send it to Simon so that he would know what she was wearing. I felt that that was so extreme, and this is exactly how he's able to exert control even so far away. It's almost like everything he tried to do was to diminish her beauty, but guess what? It didn't work. And that must have been so frustrating to him because she was still absolutely stunning without the heels, without the hair down.
During Lisa's visit to Canada, her brother Jason also made an effort to get her to open up about her turbulent relationship with Simon. However, Lisa assured him everything was fine and that there was no need to worry. Jason respected her decision and did not want to push her into revealing anything else she wasn't ready to share.
Jason wanted to remind Lisa that he would always be there for her. He wanted her to know that she could confide in him at any time, and the same went for Joan. When it came time for Lisa to return, Joan made it clear that she would come to Sydney at a moment's notice if Lisa needed her. She was actually hoping that Lisa would eventually end the relationship with Simon on her own. Maybe she just needed a little time. When in reality, she didn't have that much time left.
3 months later, in March 2011, Lisa began having her doubts again. She sent Joan a text which read, quote, "I'm not having the best day at the moment. Having domestics. I have so much to think about. Simon said a few hurtful things to me today, and all I can think about is how much I miss my family. I miss you guys so much. I'm so sad today. I feel so down and unwanted. Why do I feel this way? Why is he okay with all of this? I feel so alone and lost. Why does he not feel?" End quote. All Joan could do from so many miles away was worry and offer words of comfort and promises to help her.
What Lisa didn't know is that Simon would voice record their conversations, including one where she confided in him about how she felt about the relationship. And here's that audio now.
I have nothing else to do in
I'm
my
here
life
for you, Baba.
other than you. That's
I'm
it.
here for
If
you,
I had my
Baba.
family here, you know
I'm here
what?
for
I
you,
would spend
Baba.
half of my time with you and half of my time with my
I
family.
know.
You know what I mean? I don't have anybody else.
You have me.
So when I'm by, and I'm not trying to make you feel bad, Simon, but it hurts my feelings
have
when you
me,
say the
Baba.
things to me. You know, it's like I've
It's
never.
like
You know
healthy
what?
for
Like
us.
I always wait at home for you. I do it. Like I don't go anywhere. I don't do anything without your permission, without asking you, without you being okay with everything, and I don't do anything other than whatever it is that you tell me to do. Like, you know what? Honestly, Simon, sometimes the things you say to me can be really mean.
They're not meant to be mean. They're not meant to be
Sometimes
mean.
they can be really mean
All
to
I'm
me,
saying
and I
that is because
don't do anything intentionally to hurt
I
your
know you
feelings.
don't,
I don't do
baby.
anything. Like I
I
just
know
love
you
being with you. Like
I
the
know
only
you
time I
do.
ever speak to somebody is
Did I not stick up for you today? Did I not fight
you
for you?
did, and I loved it. But
And it's why it's because I love you, Cecilia. I might not say it all the time, or I might not, you might not think it or feel it, or, even though we do have a beautiful relationship, but know that it is real and that I love you.
It sounds like she is so lonely and trying so hard to make him happy. I said this before to you, and you might not agree, but people with Australian accents or any accents, to me, they seem to sound like more professional, or I give them the benefit of the doubt more. And that might be because I'm American, I hear someone else's accent, and I feel like, oh, well, I could see how he could be so convincing. Like she is not Australian, and he's got that charm. And I'm sure you've heard it before that women are like, and he had an accent.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Well, it's a thing. And once again, Lisa had decided that it was her issue and that her unhappiness was related to her being unproductive. She told Simon that she was ready to work again in her chosen field, which was hairstyling. Simon decided to make an arrangement with one of his friends who owned a salon. Lisa could work in the salon as a receptionist, but not a hairstylist. That was the compromise because Simon said that he didn't want Lisa having unsupervised, long conversations with clients, especially if they were male. So Simon also forbade her to be paid. That was another thing. This job was to be getting her out of the house, cure her boredom, make her feel productive, but it was supposed to be treated like an unpaid internship. And wow, working for free sounds awful, and you want to be proud of yourself.
No.
But the truth is, Simon didn't want Lisa to have any financial independence from him. Lisa took what she could get, so she agreed with all of his demands. But one day, she came home from the salon with her long hair down and styled because one of the stylists gave her a free blowout. Well, you could probably guess, but this enraged Simon, and he made her quit on the spot, saying that she was, quote, walking around like a peacock with her hair out, end quote, like she was being proud and showing off what she had. For all we know, she could have just trying to be nice. The person was like, hey, can I do a blowout on you?
I can't imagine what she feels like, but knowing everything about how Simon reacts to every little thing that she does or not supposed to do in Simon's eyes, imagine this very nice hairstylist like, hey, I have this new technique or I have some time. Looks like you can use a blowout. And in her mind going, oh no, this is going to be terrible when I get home, but I can't be rude. And deep down, she really does want that.
Right. I mean, it's literally just a hairstyle.
I know, but especially not being able to pamper yourself.
But it went deeper because he said that her new coworkers were polluting her mind, people that he doesn't even know. And her unpaid job lasted less than 2 months. It's not a surprise to me. But by April of 2011, she was back to being bored and staying at home all day by herself once again. Finally, it was Lisa's 30th birthday on June 12th in 2011, a day that's usually filled with friends and family gathering around to celebrate your special day. But Lisa felt heartbroken because she didn't hear from her mother or her brother that day, and that hurt. Why would they forget her birthday? But of course they didn't forget. What she didn't know was that Simon had intercepted their text messages and deleted them so that Lisa would feel like she was unloved and the only person that loved her was him. That's crazy. He wanted her to think that she'd been abandoned by everyone else, and then he would come to her rescue, be her shoulder to lean on, and he had plans for that night. To celebrate Lisa's big 3-0 milestone, what did Simon do? He took her to his favorite Lebanese restaurant with all of his family members and a few of his friends. There was no one there for Lisa at her own birthday party, and that's sad. And at this point, Simon had successfully isolated her from other people. In the past, for her birthday, she used to dress up, she would wear heels, she would put her makeup on, get her hair done, it would be flowing down her back, she would have a great time with the closest people in her life. But on this occasion, she wore a black button-up shirt, long black pants, and black flats. Her hair was pulled up into a severely tight bun, and she wore minimal makeup. When she posted photos from that night to her Facebook page, her cousin thought that she looked like the waitstaff. That is how she was dressed. They were confused. Well, during her birthday dinner, all of a sudden, Simon's brother pulled out a video camera and he starts to record Simon, who is beginning to do a speech. And Lisa had no idea what was happening. Once he began speaking, it became more obvious. He said, quote, "We've been together for just over a year. It's a beautiful relationship. I thank God every day for Cecilia because she's a beautiful person and she has a beautiful heart. I feel fortunate and very happy to have Cecilia, and I do love you, baby. A man is a real man when he has a beautiful woman beside him and he feels like he's the richest man in the world. He feels like he's just the king of the world because he has a woman beside him who makes him feel complete. So I just want to thank you, and I just want to say happy birthday. Before I met you, I had lost my faith in women because I couldn't find a woman who was going to serve me. And by the grace of God, you are going to age gracefully in the presence of God and in the presence of everyone. There's no further ado. I just want to say this to Cecilia. Will you marry me?" End quote.
Ew.
He said this was a beautiful relationship.
In the grace of God, you will age gracefully.
What is that? Yeah, like what does that have to do
Right.
with anything? Okay, so we do have some very grainy and bad quality video of this, and you can't really make out the words, but you can see the mannerisms, which I think are important. So I'm going to show it to you right now. Of course, Lisa, in shock, she shyly gave Simon her hand after being prompted by his family and friends to do so. So they had to say come on, accept the ring. And of course she did. And then she gave her own speech saying, quote, "This man right here has given me the greatest gift of all, and that is the gift of God. Before I met him, I knew he was there, but I didn't know he was there in the way that he was, and has changed my life and made me a better person. I look forward to spending the rest of my life with all of you." End quote. If only that was his intention. But sadly, we know there are so many hidden motives at play right now. And did you catch how he said that he couldn't find a woman to serve him? I was curious about the choice that he used for that, the word serve. I believe that he meant he couldn't find a woman to suit him, but it may have been a Freudian slip because that's exactly what he was doing. He wanted a submissive servant. So later that night, after Lisa's birthday party, she sent her mother an upsetting message. She said, quote, "To be honest, Mama, I thought you would have called me. Today was a big day, turning 30 and becoming fiancéed. I'm extremely happy, Mama. I love you." End quote. Upon learning about Simon's proposal, Joan felt heartbroken because he hadn't even involved her in the special occasion. But more than anything, Joan didn't want her daughter to marry Simon. When Lisa confided in her mother about missing her birthday wishes, they assumed it was a technical glitch. But later, they realized that Simon had deleted those messages. When Lisa spoke to her mother about her surprise engagement, her emotions were in turmoil. She could sense her daughter's apprehension and uncertainty. So she probed further. She asked her, "Are you truly sure about your decision?" And Lisa replied that she was pretty sure because she loved him. So despite doubt swirling within her, Lisa tried to convince herself that everything would turn out fine. Even though she had so many reservations, Joan pretended to be thrilled for her daughter. And she even suggested that they go wedding dress shopping and look at venues in Canada because she wanted the opportunity to persuade Lisa to leave him in person. She felt she would have a better chance of doing that than all of these secret conversations back and forth.
I bet she would hope that she would just stay.
Yeah. Never go back.
Right? Leave
Run.
all of your stuff. However, the very next day, Lisa revealed that Simon wanted her to now slow down the wedding planning due to what he called unresolved issues. He said, quote, "I'll let you know when we're going to start planning it. Until then, shut up," end quote.
That's so mean. Also, if you're having unresolved issues, why propose to her? Like, that seems odd to me.
It's like still controlling.
What I also think is that, and I'm not talking about this case specifically, but people sometimes think that these things will solve their problems. Like, oh, we'll have a baby, or oh, we'll get married. And then there'll be this event and there'll be happiness for a little while. Right. And that is also a toxic signal that is not healthy. Like, if you already are having problems, it's not good to change anything because it brings more problems. Oh, yeah. But soon I think you're going to know why Simon did this. It's the way that this man's evil mind works. It's all in his plan. But how he told her to shut up.
How can you say that to somebody you're trying to marry?
I don't know.
That's wild. Well, at one point, friends and family noticed that Lisa changed her Facebook status to single. Well, that says something. But then not too much later, she changed it back and claimed her account had been hacked.
Why would your account be hacked by someone, but all they did was change your relationship status?
Right.
Like, I feel bad for her because she's making excuses and she's acting in the moment because we have emotions.
I mean, everyone knows that she wants to get out of it, but she's so stuck.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, the couple had been constantly fighting since the engagement, and that's not a good sign at all.
No.
So Lisa then sent her mom a text that said, quote, "I know this isn't what you wanted from me, but it is what I want. He is the one. Mama, I promise. Aside from everything else, I miss you so much," end quote.
Ever since her move to the Hyde building, Simon had become even more possessive, and the engagement only made it worse. The next day, Simon and Lisa got into another argument about how much time she was forced to spend alone. She was still so lonely and sad that she wasn't even allowed to go anywhere or see anyone. But what was even harder was that Simon didn't want her to be seen by anyone, especially not guys. And therefore, if she can't be seen by anyone, she can't go anywhere because you can't control who's going to fix their gaze upon you, right? But what was new about his demands was that he also didn't want her to have any female friends. He didn't want Lisa to have anyone that she could confide in or who might help her leave the relationship. He's smart. He knows. Because remember, he can see all of her text messages. So he is one step ahead.
I mean, he's not really that smart if you can't just be a nice person and let the person stay because they love you. It's like darkness.
Well, he sent Lisa a text of his own that said, quote, "Cecilia, you are my fiance and I love you. But we both know you have some issues that affect the mood of our relationship, but you refuse to admit it. Please pray to God so that he can help you get rid of these habits. I love you and I want a future for us. Please get rid of them. Words from my heart," end quote. Words from my heart.
Wow.
Lisa wrote back, quote, "I love you too, Simon, and I do pray every single day for God to make me a better person. Simon, nobody is perfect, and I may have many things about me that I need to work on. But it breaks my heart to think that instead of helping me in a constructive way, you resort to yelling and telling me to get rid of my faults or we won't work. My whole life, all I wanted was to be accepted. I didn't even know what I did wrong. I don't feel sorry for myself, Simon. I have nobody left to make me feel that way. There are things we obviously need to think about before we go any further with this. Neither of us wants to make a mistake," end quote. Simon didn't seem very pleased with Lisa's reply. He didn't like it when she talked back to him or defended herself. So he replied, quote, "Okay, so you want me to help you get through this in a constructive way? Sure, no problem. By the way, I didn't like your last few lines. Don't use the fear of loss on me, Cecilia. I'm the one asking you to fix things before we go ahead, but without the effing games," end quote. He uses the real F word. I feel so bad for her that she believes that this is love. And many of us have been in toxic relationships, and they may even start out good or great, but then there's this downward spiral, and no one should be cursed at, called names, yelled at, or made to feel like they are below their partner.
No, absolutely not. A week later, Lisa, desperate for a way out, trying to come up with a plan, she decided to reach out to an old friend she knew in Melbourne. They were acquaintances before Lisa met Simon. Her friend was getting married and was looking to rent her current apartment. Lisa asked the friend if she could stay at the apartment temporarily while looking for a job, and while her friend found a permanent renter. The friend told Lisa she was more than welcome to stay there. So Lisa told her friend that she was booking a flight to Melbourne the next day and asked for the address. But just a few hours later, this friend got a phone call from Simon demanding that she tell Lisa that she changed her mind and she couldn't come and stay at her place. The friend refused Simon's demands, so Simon tried a different tactic. He tried to manipulate. He told the friend that Lisa was being stubborn and she wasn't serious and that it was just another childish act in order to get his attention. And that was embarrassing. This began to work.
I know. It's like he can turn people into thinking that she's just silly. She's being a silly girl. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Simon told the friend that as soon as he gave in to all of Lisa's demands, she would call and she would cancel herself. Then he told the friend that when Lisa calls, make sure to remind her that there's good in the relationship with him and that Lisa stands to lose a lot if she ends it. A few hours later, Lisa called her friend and canceled her plans to come and stay at her apartment. A few weeks later, Lisa would be dead. How does he convince that friend? I'm being serious. Like, that's kind of scary that because he was saying, as soon as I give in to her demands.
Right. It could be something along the lines of, hey, I don't know if her friend's a guy or girl, but hey, we're just getting engaged. She's starting to get cold feet. She's got into a fight. She kind of wants to leave. And I don't really want her to leave, but can you just kind of tell her, and once I give in to her, she's going to cancel.
And the friend doesn't even know what the relationship is like. So it's funny that he's like, oh, tell her there's good in the relationship.
I know.
That she stands to lose a lot.
And the person's like, yeah, this sounds like a good plan.
The person most disappointed that Lisa wasn't going to get out of Simon's place and go to her friends was Joan. She thought that this would be the perfect opportunity for her daughter to escape her controlling partner. Lisa emailed her mom saying, quote, Mom, I know you're upset with me, but I love you and understand you are just worried about me. I'm a person who wears her heart on her sleeve, and I don't think about what I do before I do it. I'm so sorry for putting you through so much. It must be even worse considering you're on the other side of the world. Ironically, all flights around Australia, including mine, were canceled today due to the ash in the air from the volcano eruption in Chile. I would have been stuck at Sydney with my stuff in Melbourne. I would have been sleeping at the airport at least on Thursday. I love you so much, Mom, and I can't even express how much I miss you. Please don't be upset with me, end quote. And at this point, the only person Lisa was allowed contact with was her trainer, Lisa Brown. She originally was a friend of Simon's from his gym in Sydney, and she agreed to take Lisa on as a private client meeting at the gym located inside the Hyde building. To avoid confusion, Lisa Brown began calling her Cecilia, which was the name that Simon preferred anyway. She told her trainer that her main goal was to gain strength and maintain a healthy weight, and that in the past she had struggled with an eating disorder and wanted to gain enough weight to become pregnant. Their first session together took place on July 13th, 2011. When the trainer first arrived, she met with both Simon and Lisa. She noticed that Lisa was tall and extremely thin and only agreed to train her if she wouldn't drop any weight. Once everything was worked out, the two women bonded right away, since Lisa Brown had also suffered from the same disorder when she was younger. The first thing that Lisa asked of her trainer was not to share any of their conversations with Simon. And of course, the trainer noticed right away that Lisa was fragile and submissive around her now fiancé, and she intended to keep that promise.
When Lisa and the trainer returned to the apartment after the first workout, Simon wanted a summary of what took place. The trainer jokingly said it was confidential. Well, that joke didn't land well. It enraged Simon. He quickly set the trainer straight. He told her that since he was paying, he expected a detailed summary after each session.
Wow.
More than anything, he demanded that there would be no personal conversations between the two of them. How do you work out and not speak? For a second, Simon's mask had slipped, and Lisa Brown saw the truly frightening and controlling man her new client was dealing with.
Lisa Brown vowed to herself right then and there that she was going to be Lisa's friend, and she was going to help her if she asked her to. Poor Lisa was so starved for friendship, she began oversharing almost immediately with her trainer and asking for help and advice. Lisa Brown was more than willing to help her new client, but she knew that she was a little bit over her head dealing with her controlling partner.
During the second week of their training session, Simon discovered a maintenance man working in the gym area. He was livid and demanded to know if he looked at Lisa or if they had made any eye contact.
It is silly. Like, this is just ridiculous. Like, how do you even know? The maintenance man.
So the trainer thought that it might be a good idea to get Lisa out of the building altogether and suggested that they train in the beach. Again, Simon stepped in and told the trainer this would not be allowed because his fiancée was not allowed in public without him.
Wow.
And just to give you an idea about how serious he was, once he discovered that Lisa went to the grocery store alone, he called her and demanded that she leave everything there and return home immediately.
I feel really bad for her. It's like she can't even go enjoy nature. She can't enjoy a walk. And after all the trainer had seen and heard, she suggested that Lisa see a friend of hers who was part therapist and part life coach. And that person was Michelle Richmond. Now, you may recall that name from the intro of this video. Don't go back now because you're going to know everything soon enough. But Lisa's trainer thought that Michelle might be able to help break the old habits that were preventing Lisa from maintaining a healthy weight. And this was how she was actually posing it to Simon, who thought that was a great idea because remember, Lisa's the broken one in his eyes. And again, Simon agreed to pay for the sessions, but also expected to be told everything that was said and discussed during such sessions. Isn't that against the rules of confidentiality?
Absolutely.
I would think so. It just sounds odd. So basically, Simon wasn't willing to allow Lisa to have any friends who weren't on his payroll. He believed that this was a way he could control the influence they might have over Lisa's life. He was very wrong about that, but it didn't matter because within 3 weeks of allowing the trainer and the life coach into Lisa's life, she would be dead. Michelle saw a glimpse of Simon's real character from the very first day. He had brought Lisa over to meet her, and after hearing the doorbell ringing a few times, Michelle finally made it to the door. And right when she opened it to warmly greet them, Simon shouted in her face, saying, "We've been waiting here for 5 minutes." And Michelle, of course, she tried to explain. She was really sorry. She didn't hear them knocking. She finally heard the bell. But it's like, that's your first impression, just someone that's demanding and rude. So sad. But once satisfied that Michelle was going to be another pawn in his game, Simon allowed Lisa to continue her session alone. And it wasn't long before she confided in her new life coach, who was apprised of the entire situation from the trainer. So she already knew what was going on. Michelle knew the assignment. She knew what her real role was. And over the next few weeks, she began to talk to Lisa about all the support services available to her and her legal rights if she decided to leave her current situation, which was the plan. They also discussed the safest way for Lisa to get away from Simon. And in order to ensure her safety, since Lisa didn't have many people to turn to, she enlisted the help of her personal trainer, Lisa Brown, to help her secretly begin to remove some of her belongings from the apartment. And Lisa was well aware that if Simon returned home and discovered a significant number of her belongings missing, he would surely suspect that something was amiss. With this in mind, she carefully selected a few personal items from their apartment, preparing to relocate them to a safe storage facility.
After some researching, Lisa had finally found a suitable storage unit in Bondi Junction called Metro Storage. So whenever Simon went to the gym, Lisa took the opportunity to hide her clothes, shoes, and other items in pillowcases discreetly. She believed this method was less likely to arouse Simon's suspicion, especially since she knew he had installed cameras inside the apartment. We know that she doesn't know about the secret pinhole camera on the outside of their apartment door.
To ensure that her actions remain undetected, Lisa would have her trainer meet her upstairs at the front door, and she would hand off the pillowcase full of items. Then the trainer would take them to Michelle. Now, Michelle was responsible for safely storing Lisa's things away. They were a team. They had a plan, but Simon was onto them. And maybe Lisa could sense it because during this time, there was a sense of nervousness among everyone involved. They were fearful for Lisa. It's widely recognized that this period is the most dangerous for individuals seeking to exit a toxic relationship. Even though Lisa had fears that Simon could read her messages, she still reached out to Michelle via text. She said, quote, "I'm feeling extremely nervous. I'm so sorry to bother you, Michelle. I hope you're having a good day," end quote.
I feel like in her nervousness, she might have totally forgot
Right.
that that Simon's tracking her texts.
Or not care because you're so desperate.
Or not care, maybe, yeah.
Because she had a support system now. So she was feeling maybe a little bit more confident that this was going to be okay. Well, Simon was not only reading these messages, but he caught on that Lisa finally had a support system and was secretly planning to leave. And it makes me so mad that he can see all this, despite Lisa believing that she thought of everything. You can't outsmart someone that's watching every move you make. Lisa was careful. She didn't even text or email her specific plans to anyone. All of her plans to leave were made in person, and that's why she believed they were safe from Simon. On one of the days that Lisa had arranged for her trainer to come to the apartment and pick up 2 pillowcases full of her items, that tiny camera outside captured everything. And since this was the second time it happened, Simon figured it out. And this is when things seemed to unravel. She had been caught. Now was time for the confrontation. Simon told her that he knew she was secretly trying to get away from him, and how dare her believe that she could get away with this. Lisa couldn't figure out how he discovered her plans. And to make matters worse, he lied to her. Instead of telling her about the hidden camera, he said that the 2 women that she thought were her friends had actually betrayed her. He said the truth is, they thought Lisa was sick and conniving, and they both confessed everything to him, every detail about her secret plan to leave. Simon went on to tell Lisa that Michelle and Lisa Brown thought she was crazy and that any other woman would be lucky to have a man like him. So they gathered all this evidence to use against Lisa and revealed it to Simon. That's disgusting, lying to her like that.
Right, because at some level, she may actually think that they might have done this.
I would have thoughts like that.
Because Lisa doesn't know how Simon saw her or even would know this, so the only logical explanation is that they turned on her.
Right. Betrayed again. Simon demanded that she reach out to both of them, either call or text, and that's exactly what she did. Word for word, Lisa texted Michelle and said, quote, "I had everything with Simon, but you've brainwashed me, Michelle, and now I'm out on the street with nothing. You should be ashamed of yourself," end quote. The only problem was Michelle didn't fall for that text message. She knew it was something that Simon had forced Lisa to do. She tried calling Lisa back several times, and finally, Simon called Michelle and told her if she ever tried to contact Lisa again, he would personally come and harm her. Michelle was so frightened by his threats. She moved from her home. That is how scary this man is. Later, Joan would point out that the word ashamed was something that Simon would send to Lisa about her own behavior. It was never a word that Lisa would use. This monster also forced Lisa to kneel at his feet. Then he ordered her to submit her free will to him and demanded that she never again ask to have an equal voice in their relationship. And of course, out of fear, Lisa agreed to all of his demands. Now she was even more isolated without Michelle and Lisa Brown. As a result, the only person she still spoke to on a regular basis was her mother. Feeling overwhelmed by her current situation, Lisa made a very difficult decision. She decided it was time to tell her mom to come get her, for real this time. On the night of July 28th, overwhelmed by fear and sadness, Lisa reached out to her mother. She was desperately seeking comfort and guidance. She said, quote, "Mommy, please come get me," end quote. And she told her mom that she would book her a flight the very next week. And she admitted to her she was terrified of Simon and that he made her kneel at his feet and that she agreed to everything just to calm him down. From her vantage point at the Hyde, Lisa had a clear view of this charming little skating rink through her window, and Simon forbade her from visiting it. So she was so filled with curiosity and longing for normalcy in her life that Lisa asked her mom if they could go visit and go to the skating rink when she came to Australia. And you can just tell how badly she craves real love and human connection. And she was finally trying to escape again, now with her mother's help. Understanding the situation's urgency, Joan wasted no time reassuring her daughter. She calmly and assertively advised Lisa to prioritize her safety. Bottom line, Joan said, grab your purse and leave. Material things don't matter at this moment. Just get out of the apartment. And while they were still on the phone, Lisa told her mom that she just felt so cold. Despite the fact that they were halfway around the world from each other, Joan instinctively knew how to provide some solace to her daughter. She told her to place her robe in the dryer for a few minutes to warm it up. Once it was heated, Lisa could put it on and she would feel the comforting embrace of her mother. Even from afar, Joan's suggestion was a small gesture that had such a significant impact, and it reminded Lisa that she was not alone and that her mother's love and support transcended the physical distance between them. And that almost brought me to tears as a mom because I cannot fathom this. It's so sad. You're so far away. I would be terrified because you see all the red flags. You're like almost waiting for something to break, you know? So later that night, after Simon fell asleep, Lisa began getting curious, or maybe it was bravery. She found a note in a drawer with Simon's computer password on it. When she logged into his computer, she clicked through files and folders, and she noticed an innocuously named document. It was tucked away, hidden in another folder. And when she opened it, she was confronted with a meticulously kept log of her every move. She discovered that Simon was logged into her email account, her iMessage accounts. She found out that he had full access to all forms of her communication and could control which messages she saw. And he would delete things that he didn't want her to see. Imagine the adrenaline that you would be feeling in that moment because it's finally clicking. You're like, wait a minute. No, that didn't really happen. She also found out that there was no bridging visa. That didn't happen. He didn't want her to go to the wedding because sometimes weddings, they're romantic. You're going to meet someone. That didn't happen. He purposely messed up her flights. Can you even imagine finding all of that out? So the documents inside this folder detailed her whereabouts, all of her conversations. It was as if Simon had been shadowing her every step, observing her every move. But the thing that upset Lisa the most was the discovery of the pinhole camera, because there were screenshots of her handing that pillowcase filled with her personal items to her trainer. So Lisa was outraged. She felt violated. And in a moment of strength, she changed Simon's password. That is bold. She changed it to the word trust. And well, that's a word that this man would never guess because he doesn't know what it means. But at 6 a.m. that very next morning on July 30th, Joan received a phone call from Lisa. She had locked herself in the bathroom and was whispering frantically. She said, quote, "Mama, if anything happens to me, please contact Michelle Richmond," end quote. Then Lisa insisted that her mom write down all of Michelle's details, explaining as quickly as possible that she was a life coach and she had been confiding in her for the past few weeks, and they had devised a plan to leave Simon. After Joan said that she had all the information, Lisa made her repeatedly read it back to her. She wanted to make sure that her mom was going to contact this woman. And finally, Joan said, "What the hell is going on?" But all that Lisa said, or maybe had the time to say, was, quote, "Mama, it's okay. I'll call and talk to you as soon as I can, however I can," end quote. But that call never came. Joan was frantic. She kept trying to reach Lisa since that last phone call. She just kept calling and texting, but she got no answer. The next call she would get was from the Toronto police. It was 10 hours later. They were downstairs waiting to be buzzed into her building to speak with her. And she knew right away that something wasn't right. She met them out in the hallway near her unit, and as soon as she saw them, she screamed. And she repeatedly kept saying, "He killed her! He killed her!" And she started crying before they even had a chance to break the news to her. So what was known at the time and relayed to Joan was that around 10 a.m. Sydney time, just hours after speaking with her mother, Lisa was found lying lifeless outside the front of the Hyde building. It appeared that she had somehow fallen from the balcony of the 15th floor apartment she shared with her fiancé. When police and rescue arrived on the scene, it was clear that Lisa was no longer alive. It would be nearly impossible to live through such an extreme impact, yet that didn't stop people from trying to help when they witnessed what had occurred.
It just so happens that a doctor saw Lisa fall. Dr. Angus Gray. He rushed to her side and began making assessments. Lisa landed on her side and her back was broken, along with at least one of her legs. He knew immediately that she was dead, yet he still attempted to revive her. He began CPR, noting that she had broken ribs on both the sides of her chest and her spine was fractured in numerous places. He stayed by her side until the police arrived. When the police got there, Simon immediately rushed over to them. He was distraught, Still in his pajamas, he made a statement like, "Why would Cecilia do this?" And he began implying immediately that Lisa had taken her own life. He wanted to provide police with information about what unfolded 15 floors above before the fall.
He explained how his now fiancée, the woman that was lying dead on the unforgiving concrete ground, had become hysterical that morning after telling him there was a secret that she had been keeping. She told him she had something to reveal, so they went to the living room to talk. The conversation got heated, and then she wouldn't tell him what she was hiding. But Simon said that was normal. They would argue, and then they would cool down. And to help de-escalate things, he explained that he went into the kitchen to make Lisa a cup of tea, and that is when he confronted her once again and urged her to tell him what was going on. Instead, he claimed that all of a sudden she got up and she ran to their bedroom, and then he saw her climbing over the treadmill and out onto the balcony. And he yelled, "What are you doing?" And at that point, he stopped making the tea and he ran towards where she was. And in that moment, he thought that maybe she was pretending to jump to scare him for attention, because he claimed that she had done this 2 times before in the past. One time, she threatened to jump from a moving car and she opened the door, but she never actually jumped. And then the second time, she did jump out. But they weren't going that fast, so she didn't sustain any major injuries. But as he made his way to the balcony, he saw that she had climbed over the railing and she was trying to position herself on the metal awning. And that's when she lost her footing and she slipped, falling to her death. Simon told the police he tried to grab her, but it was too late. And he screamed her name as he looked down below. And then he ran to the elevator and came down to the front of the building, hoping that somehow she survived. But of course, when he got down there, he realized that she hadn't. At this point, many people had gathered around. Some had already been there since right after Lisa fell, and others were trying to figure out what happened. The police taped off the area and began to question everyone. One by one, they eliminated anyone who hadn't witnessed something significant. Anyone left was asked to recount everything they had heard and seen. Meanwhile, medical personnel were preparing Lisa's body for transport and taking notes of the scene. Lisa was fully clothed, but missing one of her shoes, which had come off during the fall. Interestingly, her purse was lying close by. Its contents were scattered on the ground, and that was photographed, as you can see here. Finally, Lisa was transferred to the medical examiner's office, and police were following Simon up to the apartment so they could get a better understanding of Lisa's fall. They took pictures of the interior balcony area, as well as the kitchen, where Simon said he was making tea. And you can see, if you look right here, the teapot on the counter, it's open. Simon told them that there were cameras inside the apartment. He even showed them how they operated, and he told them he hoped that they had been working at the time so they can see exactly what happened. He was fully cooperative, and he gave them access to his computer, which they confiscated. What they didn't know about was that Simon had backed up all of the footage from the past onto a hard drive that he had hidden in the ceiling. And Simon was not a suspect. As a matter of fact, for the most part, the police believed his version of events. At that point, they didn't have a reason not to. Yet. But there are definitely questions. For example, there was a suitcase packed full of women's clothing left open in the bedroom, and next to it was a folder with Lisa's passport, airline tickets, and other important documents. These were photographed, and I'm showing them on the screen. Word was traveling fast. Neighbors in the building became aware of Lisa's death, and it was also on the news. Now there were more people coming forward with information in addition to those who had already been questioned. One person who saw the fall provided this account of events. His name was Yuto Yoshioka. He was a 17-year-old Japanese exchange student. He was sitting at the bus stop across from the Hyde apartment building with his brother when he heard a sound that sounded like it was coming from above. So he looked up in that direction, and that's when he was stunned to see a person falling from the building, and it happened so fast. He also saw a shirtless man standing on one of the balconies, leaning over, looking toward the ground, and he said he saw him raise both of his arms over his head with both hands clenched into fists. What could that mean? It could be anything, right? It could be shock, it could be anger, or it could be something else. It's almost like primal, like a gorilla in the wild. But I want you to remember that motion. When neighbors came forward, the narrative shifted. Several of them claimed to have heard screams coming from Simon and Lisa's apartment before 10 a.m. that morning. One neighbor said that she heard banging on her door and a woman screaming for help. And the woman's cries were, please help me, God help me. And upon hearing the banging on the door, the neighbor hurried to see what was going on. But unfortunately, she was too late because no one was in the hallway. It was still July 30th, just later in the day, when a man named Josh Rathmell, who was an editor for ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Company, said he had witnessed Lisa's fall that morning. He told them that around 10 a.m., he was walking through Hyde Park when he heard something, so he directed his attention up towards the 15th floor balcony. Someone was screaming, and at that moment, he saw a shirtless man in red and white striped pajama bottoms throwing what appeared to be a suitcase or a luggage off the balcony. He said when he heard this scream, it sounded like someone that was deranged and emotional, and he thought that it was a drug addict, like a junkie throwing something over the building. He said that his perception was that the shirtless man was irrational and angry. Then he heard the commotion from the people on the ground and was confused as to why they were concerned over trash being thrown off of a balcony by someone that he perceived at this moment to be a drug addict. Only when he got closer did he realize that there was a small person that had been thrown over. A few minutes later, he saw the same angry man, and this time with a white shirt on outside the building, acting upset and concerned. Josh had finally made his way into work that day, not processing what he had seen. He was still in shock over the lifeless, broken body of the small woman on the ground. It took him a while until he realized he may have witnessed a sinister and criminal act. It wasn't until the story was being talked about at his workplace, since he worked at a news station, that he made the connection, and that's when he called the police. Here is him explaining that now.
Someone holding the black object and unloading it, almost in a rage. To my perception, without a shirt on, carrying what I thought at the time was a black suitcase or a bit of luggage or several items, and it looked to me as though he was unloading them, throwing them off.
Over the next few days, the police began scrubbing through that CCTV footage from the Hyde, doing a forensic investigation on Simon and Lisa's devices, and they'd also gotten a very chilling piece of evidence from the medical examiner. When Lisa was transported for the autopsy, her clothes were removed and examined, and inside one of the pockets of her jeans, they found ripped up pieces of paper. When they put them together, it revealed a horrifying revelation. It read, quote, "There are surveillance cameras inside and outside the house," end quote. Lisa had written this note, a breadcrumb that she left behind, now a missing puzzle piece, as though she was speaking from the grave. Who was this note for, they wondered, and why had she ripped it up? One thing was clear. She knew that she was being watched. This is a picture of that exact note, and it is just chilling because we know that at some point she was going to alert someone. Was it her mom? Was it the trainer? Was it the guards at the door? Like, who was it? Well, this CCTV footage captured a seemingly distraught Simon getting into the elevator following Lisa's fall. You can see him here in his white shirt and his red and white striped pajama pants. Just like Josh Rathmell recalled, he gets in, his hands are kind of on his head, he presses the button, and then he's almost pacing around and freaking out. I told you to remember what the exchange student had said. He described a man that was putting his hands in the air, and he was doing a similar gesture that's seen in this video. And he was doing all kinds of other things. He even makes like the I don't know. He was going like, I don't know. Like he was making all these different motions and a few angry looking ones. Like just like slamming his fist down, grabbing his hair. He was all over the place. Then he sort of bent over, leaning on his knees, just waiting for those doors to open at the bottom floor. He's fixing his shirt, taking a few deep breaths, and then finally those doors do open. Then the next clip that they retrieve is from the outside of the elevator in the lobby where we can see Simon running down the corridor towards the front of the building. Now on to the forensic searches of the devices. During their examination, the detectives made a startling discovery. Lisa's phone and computer were infested with spyware. It showed that she had been under constant surveillance without her knowledge or consent. And we knew that, but they didn't at the time. So as this investigation continued, the police stumbled upon yet another disturbing find. Simon's secret pinhole surveillance camera that was positioned to monitor the hallway. This revelation exposed an intrusion beyond Lisa's devices and suggested an even broader more invasive breach of this woman's privacy. And that is one reason that made them reconsider Simon's story. And as they dug deeper, that's when they uncovered a bombshell piece of very incriminating evidence. And ironically, it was captured on the same camera that Simon intended to use to spy on Lisa. Now it revealed his secret. It was only a few seconds, but it was disturbing. It showed a shirtless Simon forcefully grabbing Lisa and then clamping one hand tightly against her mouth and the other around her neck as he aggressively dragged her back inside apartment 1503. She had tried to escape. Like, look at her right now. Look how frightened she looks and how scary this is. She's terrified. It's sickening. And the neighbor said that she was screaming. So now investigators see Simon's hand over her mouth and all of this. And according to the timestamps, this video was captured merely 65 seconds or so before Lisa had allegedly fallen from the 15th floor balcony, still clutching her handbag. That is such a short amount of time. There wouldn't be any time for him to make a T between, that's what he said. Yeah. So they proceeded to play the other clips. There was one later at 9:55 and 27 seconds where Simon still doesn't have a shirt on. And he comes out of the door of the unit and then he puts his hands on his head and then he goes back inside and reemerges 33 seconds later at 9:56:08. This time he's wearing a white shirt and he walks towards the elevators. Now this matched up to the timestamps from the elevator videos. So who knows what he was doing inside the apartment for half a minute, besides maybe obviously grabbing his shirt and making himself look presentable.
Finally, officers had enough to charge Simon with Lisa's murder. He was arrested just 4 days later. A few weeks after his arrest, he was released into the custody of his family on a $600,000 bail. It would be 2 years before Simon went to trial. Simon planned to testify on his behalf.
And it's no surprise that Simon wanted to testify on his behalf. I mean, obviously, he's so good at manipulating people, he thought he could manipulate an entire courtroom. This investigation had just begun. As they went deeper into all the evidence, investigators were also able to determine that Lisa had snooped through Simon's computer on the night of July 29th. It was apparent from the late night unlocking, all the keystrokes showing the folders that were opened and examined one by one, and then the password change. The extent of this intrusion astonished Lisa's mother and brother, leaving them both in shock. And there was much more being revealed to investigators by Joan. Everything you already know. Investigators were informed that Lisa had plans to leave. And that morning, she called her mom to tell her what was happening and to contact Michelle Richmond. Well, they did. And she and Lisa Brown provided everything they knew. What really happened was on the morning of Lisa's death, she had packed her suitcase, got all of her documents together, and planned to leave. She called her mother because she knew if and when Simon found out, he would become enraged. And sure enough, Simon tried to log into his computer and it wouldn't open. At first, he thought that he was making a mistake, typing in the wrong password. But then it dawned on him that Lisa had changed it. He immediately and aggressively confronted her, and she admitted she had felt violated by what she saw and changed the password to trust. Once Simon regained control of the computer, he turned off the inside surveillance cameras. So we will never know what happened next. But I'll repeat what we already do know. This is the most dangerous period in a relationship like this, when the woman tries to leave. It's for this reason that experts advise victims to carefully and secretly create a safe plan to leave. This is almost impossible to do in a situation like Lisa's. Simon simply felt like Lisa belonged to him. She was nothing more than a possession to serve him. And he said in his marriage proposal 6 weeks earlier, as his fiancée, she was even more of a possession. And that is exactly why he took that next step, not because of love. This isn't love. And you know how I know? When he texted Lisa this text, he said, quote, "Who the F do you think you are walking around the house like you own it, or coming and going without my permission," end quote. He never saw Lisa as an individual with rights and feelings, and that's not love. It was in these final moments of her life that Lisa realized that Simon would never allow her to walk away from him. She went into the bathroom that morning and tore up that note that she had written about the cameras. Then she grabbed her purse like her mother had instructed her to do, and she made a run for it. Sadly, as close as she was to freedom, Simon was just steps behind her. There was no making tea and having a conversation. With only about a minute between him grabbing her and her body flying over that ledge, it became clear that Simon threw her tiny, thin body right over the balcony. Here's a picture from the beginning of their relationship where he's carrying her over his head. And this paints a picture of how easily it would have been for him to pick her up and throw her over. It's devastating. It's sad. And now I wanted to make one other point real fast. Imagine that she did climb over that balcony because she's running away from this terrifying man. She's afraid that he might strangle her or kill her. And let's just say that was her only escape. Maybe she was going to hop on someone else's balcony and then she slipped. The truth still remains that she wouldn't have gone over that balcony if it wasn't for the fact that he was aggressively chasing after her.
Right, she was scared for her life.
Exactly. But it was way more likely that this man threw her over. They just had to prove it. So don't leave yet. I want to tell you exactly how all of this comes to an end. And one new fact that made me roll my eyes so far back in my head. So just wait. 2 years before Simon went to court. Well, he didn't waste any time finding a new girlfriend to stand by him. Yeah, through all of it. And her name is Rachel Louise. And she actually met Simon back when she was only 19. And just like with Lisa, a mutual friend introduced them. But they didn't become a couple until Simon was facing murder charges. And if you haven't watched our last episode, there's something eerily familiar about the men in both these stories. They had to find a woman to be a cheerleader when they were accused of killing a former partner.
Amazing.
That's a coincidence that I didn't see coming. And this woman that Simon found was perfect. And you'll know why very soon. Just another one of his pawns. Simon and his defense team knew his best chances were a bench trial. They knew that the stories of control would likely enrage a jury, so they hoped that his charges would at least be reduced to manslaughter on technical grounds. That means there would be no jury at all, just a judge. And that is how this case was heard, with one judge, a woman, Justice Lucy McCollum. Simon began his testimony by admitting that, you know what, he could become jealous on occasion, but he explained why. He had good reasons for his jealousy. Simon told the court that Lisa was an attention seeker, that Lisa was emotional, erratic, and would intentionally dress to seduce other men, often leaving with revealing clothes on that were very thin without wearing a bra. He also told the court that she had twice given him chlamydia, and the prosecution was able to counter this because Lisa's medical records were brought into evidence and they showed that she never, ever tested positive for an STD. Wow, a nice try. So Simon explained that all he wanted to do was bring Lisa closer to God and his Catholic faith. But there was a secret that was preventing him from trusting her. When Lisa first went to an official confession at the church, she told Simon that she had shared a secret with the priest. Well, Simon told her, no, there could never be any secrets between them. And he told her to immediately tell him. Lisa said she wasn't ready to do so. So Simon explained to the court that he did what any other reasonable man would do in this situation. He installed spyware on her phone. He cloned her phone, installed cameras inside and outside of the apartment, and limited who she could see until she agreed to tell him the secret. She could have just told him any secret. Like, what was this big
I think
secret?
that's all made up anyways.
It's all made up.
Oh, yeah, it's
Yeah.
all made up.
As if this were a perfectly normal response. And then he told the court that after a brush with the law, he had gone to live in a monastery in France and that he converted to Catholicism. That was actually true. And we're going to get to his brush with the law in a second. As if this meant that he couldn't be capable of harming someone. And there was a lot more to that story. But in the end, the defense tried to make it look like Lisa's death was an attention-seeking accident. Later on cross-examination, Simon would suggest that Lisa was a dancer and that she was able to leap over that balcony in a single movement, like not even touching the railing, like just soaring over. And during the trial, when his sister Barbara passed him, she would actually blow him a kiss. Say like, God bless you, Simon. Remember, his sisters are his servants. Remember that.
Mm-hmm.
When the lead detective testified, he told the court that they later discovered that the interior cameras were backed up to that hard drive. Remember, it was hidden in the ceiling. But by the time that the hard drive was finally turned over to the police, all of the footage was missing. And you know what Simon said? Oh, that was a glitch. It must have been a glitch. But he did admit to having his brother check the hard drive to make sure the police hadn't planted any evidence on there. Lisa Brown and Michelle Richmond testified against Simon, and their testimony was, as you can imagine, emotional and devastating. They described a frightened woman who was so close to escaping before she met her tragic end at the hands of her controlling abuser. Another witness from Lisa's past also testified. She had attended school with Lisa for the first 4 months of her relationship with Simon, and she testified that Lisa told her Simon promised if she ever left him, he would kill her, and then he would make her death look like she took her own life. She even confided in this friend that she thought Simon may poison her. It's really sad because we know how conniving they are. The CSI techs dusted the entire balcony for prints, and guess what? They didn't find any belonging to Lisa. They did, however, find Simon's left palm print and his fingerprints. Of course, his attorneys, they countered this by saying that he grabbed the balcony when he was trying to help Lisa and that there were unknown smears on the glass and that could belong to Lisa as she was, jumping over. And you can see these prints and smears. They're right here in this photo. They even tried to argue that Lisa could have used her handbag to help cushion the railing. Like she was using her handbag, but then her handbag went with her. Yeah. And I was just confused about that. It made no sense to me. During the few weeks that this trial went on, there was a lot of publicity. This was a very high-profile case. And in the spotlight were Simon's family, especially his mother and sisters, and of course his new 22-year-old girlfriend, Rachel. The striking resemblance between Rachel and Lisa did not go unnoticed. People were talking about that right away. They could have been sisters. They looked very similar. And conveniently, all the people supporting Simon were women, proclaiming his innocence. Rachel said he was the best boyfriend that she ever had. Well, honey, he is on his best behavior because he has a reason to, don't you think? Mm-hmm. And she supposedly gave Simon her entire life savings, amounting to a staggering $85,000 to help him pay off his legal expenses. She even disclosed that she borrowed an additional $30,000 from her friends. And I'm not going to stop there. Her father even contributed $80,000.
Wow.
That's how much she was convinced he was innocent. After both sides gave their closing statements, the presiding judge took the case under advisement and rendered the verdict a week later. She found Simon guilty of murder. And as the verdict was delivered, Rachel, she broke down. She was hysterically crying. She was outside, I have this clip, smoking the cigarette, and she couldn't even hold the cigarette. She's like, "You're wrong." That's what she screamed to the court. At the sentencing hearing, a few weeks later, both Joan and Jason decided not to attend. Instead, they flew back to Canada. It was just too much for them at this point. Now, Justice McCollum went on to explain that she had to take Simon's 3 previous brushes with the law, as he called them, brushes with the law, into consideration. And according to court documents, he bit the ear of Detective Senior Constable Keith Bristow, severing it, and also attacked Constable David Burgess. These documents also said Simon's mother attacked Constable Burgess as well. Wow. Mommy's boy until the end. Remember I told you that Lisa's mom said that women in his life were his servants? We've heard it a few times, but
that was Simon's second offense. He was arrested a third time for being in possession of 52 tablets of ecstasy and $5,200 in cash. This time, Simon served 2.5 years in prison. Are you wondering about his first offense?
I was.
It was for trespassing and stalking an ex-girlfriend while she was at work.
Once again, Simon didn't believe that someone should have personal autonomy to end a relationship. He always saw women as possessions. And when he could no longer control Lisa, he threw her over the balcony, making it look like she jumped, like he always told her he would. Before the reading of his sentencing, he gave a brief statement. after protesting his innocence, and he made an extraordinary suggestion that Joan and Jason might find some consolation in hearing what he had to say, that Lisa did not die as a result of being murdered. So the justice had a lot to say. It was very legalese, and I don't think that it really benefits reading it word for word. But what I will say is that in light of all the evidence, it seemed like Simon put a mask on to all those close to him.
Right.
So when they would testify to his character, they would say, he's amazing, he's nice, he's kind, he helps people in need. And that was true. He did do that. But what they would either overlook or they were blinded to, as the justice said, was the fact that there was another side to him. And it was clear by what he did to that officer. Like, that is a violent act. And it's so similar to what he did with Lisa. Yeah. He goes into a rage and he commits these acts of violence. So considering all the facts, she decides that there's no doubt he did what he did. He's completely guilty. And now for his sentence, she had to take into consideration those things you just talked about, the other offenses that he had committed.
And also that rehabilitation would not serve any purpose.
Because his family and his friends, they still held to their own truth that he was innocent. They were just
a tragic accident.
Yep, they were calling it a tragic accident. They still would not say that she had been murdered. So in light of all the evidence, he was sentenced to a non-parole period of 18 years, and it started on May 21st, 2013. The first date that he was eligible for parole is going to be May 21st, 2031. After the sentence was read, one of Gatani's sisters shouted, "In the name of Jesus Christ, he won't be doing any of that time." Another family member was heard yelling out, "You didn't get a fair trial, brother." There were also shouts coming from Simon's family that they needed an ambulance for his mom. Someone said, "Call an ambulance for mom. She's in so much shock." When they were taking Simon away to jail, Rachel was crying while saying, "I love you, Simon." And he replied with, "It's okay, baby." So throughout this trial, something I told you I was going to roll my eyes at, and I did. Rachel, she had staged protests outside of the courthouse. I mean, they were holding, a bunch of people that were in support of Simon were holding these offensive signs that blamed Lisa for deciding to dim herself for a relationship. These signs had things on them like, "Oh, is Josh sure? Because he said he saw a white man on the balcony. Is this Simon white?" Insinuating that Josh hadn't seen a shirtless Simon because, Simon's more olive skin. I mean, it was just, they were outrageous statements. If you look at some of the signs, I'm going to put them on the screen. I'm not going to go through all of them. There was one that said something about how could Lisa be unconscious and still be holding her handbag? Because that was an assumption that was made. Simon had rendered her unconscious in that 60 seconds or something. But actually, Rachel, what I would want to say is, right, why was she holding her handbag at all?
Mm-hmm.
She was holding her handbag because she was trying to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this, it left a really bad taste, and it was very inappropriate. Rachel also went on Australian TV and did paid interviews,
Wow.
where she suggested that Lisa was controlling, that she was the person controlling. And to prove that, she said that, "Look at me. I wear a lot of makeup. I wear jewelry. I wear revealing clothing and high heels." So she insinuated that Lisa offered to give up the way she dressed to control how Simon dressed, and that she gave up her ability to leave the apartment so that she could manipulate Simon into staying home with her. Then she told the interviewer that she planned to write a book about a paradox. It was about how she had been in a relationship with a controlling man who everyone thought was good, and she left it for a giving and loving man who everyone thought was bad and controlling. It was an absurd statement. Everyone thought it was really hurtful. Yeah. And she even painted Lisa as unstable, depressed, and wanting to take her own life, and that she was responsible for her own death.
I mean, when we remember back at the beginning, Simon wasn't anything like what he turned out to be. Allowed her to do everything, dressed the way she wanted,
Yeah.
And that's the same thing he was doing with Rachel. Rachel gave another interview in which she suggested that she may need to go to law school to help with his appeal.
She did. She went to law school.
Wow.
So she was asked if she was going to wait around for him for the next 18 years. And she said that was absurd, that life would have to go on for her. And she saw no irony in that statement because Lisa would have liked her own life to have gone on. And during this time in prison, Simon's relationship with Rachel faced numerous challenges, as you can imagine, and eventually they did split up. Rachel stated that it was extremely difficult to maintain a relationship with a man who was incarcerated. Yeah, and why would you want to? Why would you want to? And I wanted to mention that outside the courthouse during the initial verdict, Lisa's mom told reporters, quote, "There are no winners in this case. Two families have had their lives dramatically changed forever. We will always mourn the loss of our beautiful Lisa Cecilia and are working towards making her legacy a powerful wake-up call to young women. My daughter used to say, people can ask for help, but children and animals cannot. And now young women who are caught up in situations like my daughter found herself in need a voice as well." End quote. Joan said that Lisa's favorite saying was, "Families are forever." And to honor her legacy, Joan began the Lisa Harnum Foundation, dedicated to helping other victims of domestic situations escape these relationships. And this foundation strongly upholds the belief that everyone deserves to live free from violence and fear. In reference to Lisa's deafening scream as she plummeted to her death, Joan has stated that her scream still speaks for itself and says, quote, "It says, stop the violence against women. Just stop." End quote. I feel so awful for Lisa's family and friends because she didn't deserve this. No one deserves this.
Never.
But she was strong and she tried. She tried to outsmart him by even getting out there and banging on her neighbor's door and trying to get, that Lisa Brown and Michelle involved.
Yeah.
Well, that is all that we have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in to our second official Darklivity episode.
And we just want to say thank you for taking the time and watching today's case.
And also all of your support and your feedback. It's very appreciated. And we can't wait for our next video. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell because we want to post every Monday, but sometimes life happens and we want you to be aware that we're going to be here. Just might not always be on Mondays.
Or Tuesdays.
Or Wednesdays. But it will be someday. Okay. Bye.